Absolutely. Chairman Vasquez?
Present.
Vice Chair Schaefer?
Present.
Member Gaines?
Present.
Member Cohen?
Present.
Deputy Controller Stowers?
Present.
We have a quorum. Everybody's here. We will open up with the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could just stand and we'll get this going. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all. Once again, let me just remind everybody that we are all on the same, including the speakers, we're all simultaneously sharing an open teleconference line. So your patience is needed to keep the audio clean and clear. And please ask for your turn to speak after each presentation has concluded so the transcriptionist can clearly hear and properly record this meeting. With that, let me have Ms. Davis please announce our first order of business.
Our first order of business is an announcement from Acting Chief of Board Proceedings, Henry Nanjo, regarding public teleconference participation. Mr. Nanjo, are you available? Mr.
Yes.
Nanjo?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. To the individuals who have joined the Board of Equalization for today's meeting via teleconference, throughout the duration of today's meeting, you will be primarily in a listen mode, only mode. As you may know from our public agenda notice in our website, we have requested that individuals who wish to make a public comment fill out the public comment submission form found on our, quote, additional information, unquote, web page, which can be found on www.boe.ca.gov. If a public comment request has been received by our board proceeding staff on a specific item, after the presentation of that item has concluded, your name will be called and the operator will provide directions for you to identify yourself. Additionally, if you have not already filled out a public comment form, the moderator will provide instructions after the presentation of each item on how to make a public comment. The operator will identify your line and unmute you so you can make your public comment. We ask that the person whose name is called give the public comment at that time and limit their comment to 3 minutes. Additionally, if you intend to make a public comment, we recommend dialing into the meeting on the teleconference line, as the audio broadcast on our website experiences a 1 to 3 minute delay. We ask that everyone who is not intending to make a public comment please mute their line if possible, and if not, minimize background noise. If there are technical difficulties when we are in the public comment portion of our meeting, we will do our best to read submitted comments into the record at the appropriate times. Thank you for your patience and understanding. Back to you, Ms. Davis.
Mr. Chairman, are you ready for the first item?
Yes, just before you do it though, I forgot to announce, just to let the members know and the public that we're going to try to set ourselves up to do our lunch break at noon, and it'll be a short one. We'll probably go 15 to 20 minutes, but we'll announce it. We're looking for a noon break here. With that, Ms. Davis, if you would please call the first item.
Thank you, sir. Our first item is G1, Proposed Amendments to Property Tax Rule 202, presented by Mr. Lawrence Lynn of the Board of Equalization Legal Division. Mr. Lynn, are you available to make your report?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. If you can speak up just a little bit. Thank you so much. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, then I'll do so. Okay, good morning, Chairman Vasquez and members of the board. My name is Lawrence Lynn, and I am a tax counsel with the legal department. I'm here to request that the board vote to initiate the rulemaking process for the proposed amendments to Rule 202, which is entitled Allocation of Aircraft of Certificated Air Carriers and Scheduled Air Taxi Operators. Now, if you recall, this rule has been previously brought before the board during the meeting on November 19, 2019. At that meeting, the board adopted Emergency Rule 202 so as to comply with Senate Bill 791. However, the emergency rule can only be valid for up to 360 days. And since the emergency rule is temporary, we request that the board adopt and authorize for publication the proposed amendments to Rule 202 so as to commence the official Certificate of Compliance action to make the emergency rule permanent. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions? I have a couple quick ones, but let me ask the members first.
I have one if I could.
Yes, Mr. Gaines, go ahead.
This is Member Gaines. Thank you. I am just wondering, and maybe during some of the comments later in this discussion, this question could be answered, but I'm just trying to get clarity with these new rules. And I know that it was done on a basis engaging the assessors and also the airlines. But I'm trying to figure out, does this allocation, will it increase values of aircraft or decrease values of aircraft? Or was it done in such a way that they did everything to keep it neutral? So I don't know if there's someone, if Mr. Lin, can you answer that? Or yep. I'd love to hear a comment
Mr. Gaines,
through the proceeding too.
Mr. Gaines, this is Richard Moon from the legal department, and I can answer that question for you. And Dave Young, the deputy director of property tax, may have some additional thoughts as well. But when they the taxation of aircraft has a long history, and at one point there was a statutory formula to calculate the values for the aircraft, and in 2016 that statute sunset. And so for several years, there was sort of, just for lack of a better term, what I'll call chaos. Actually, I shouldn't say chaos, but because there was no longer a statutory formula in effect, the assessors assessed the value of the aircraft according to just general assessment rules. And when they did SB 791, they weren't looking necessarily to increase or decrease those assessments. What they were doing was trying to make them uniform. And so the allocation formula that they put in sought to do that. And the one thing that they did that was a big change from the previous statutory way that it was done was to remove the representative period. And so it was that every single year, the board would have to pick a representative period that represented the activity of the airlines over the year. But now that representative period is gone, and SB 791 says to look at the essentially the entire year. And so the purpose of the statute was really to make things uniform as opposed to make the assessments either lower or higher.
Yeah, that's great. I guess we don't know what the real effect is until it's been implemented. Is that correct?
That's correct. That is correct.
But at least we're addressing, as board members of the Board of Equalization, where this legislation is helping make sure that the taxation of aircraft is equalized between counties, that the rationale and the method for determining value is the same. Is that a correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. This rule will implement SB 791, which makes that formula the formula that assessors need to use throughout the state.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Along those lines, real quick, how is this change going to affect staff's workload in terms of the increased amount of data being handled?
If I may weigh in on that, this
Yes.
is David Young. I'm the Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. This rule actually just comports with the change in law. The change in law was co-developed. I mean, both sides, the assessor's office and the industry representatives had equal participation in developing this legislation and input in this rule. What this changes is that instead of looking at a 1 week period in order to measure the presence of aircraft in California, so we can allocate among states, it looks at a whole year. It does sound like more work, but they've actually agreed on a methodology in which to get that data to the airline industry, to get it to the assessors in a summarized form so that they are able to process it. So it does change the nature of the work, but I believe that in its summary form, it should help. They are right now in the midst of the first year of implementation, so I am positive that they will have lessons learned and figure out efficiencies and better methodologies in which to do this as we progress. So I think they've taken it into consideration. I think it's more of a change in how they get the data and hopefully not a whole lot more work.
Thank you. And while you're there, Dave, another quick question. Who will be the lead county for this upcoming reporting, and are they prepared?
Yes. Well, Los Angeles County has always been the major player in the assessment of aircraft because they have LAX and they have a lot of aircraft coming in and out of their airports. But each airline is designated. Each county is designated the lead county for different airlines. So the work is gathered in one place and then distributed to individual counties so they can go ahead and do the work for individual airlines. Then it's put back together and then allocated to each county in which that airline has a presence in. So if you were Delta, the lead county may be, well, I'll just pick a county, San Mateo, and they will do the assessment and then allocate it and then give that work to other counties that have Delta landing in their airports. So the lead county is LA in general. They do a lot of the coordination, and then each airline has a separate lead county which handles the assessment of that airline.
Got it. Okay. Any other questions, members? Seeing none or hearing none.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Cohen, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the people on the screen and good morning to the folks that are on the call. I just wanted to comment on the BOE staff. I just wanted to commend the BOE staff and also the California Assessors Association, as well as the representatives from the air carriers for just really working collaboratively on the property tax 202. This issue has preceded our existence as board members. Many people, Yvette Stowers, you may recall this. I mean, this has just been a long time coming. So it's kind of nice to just kind of swoop in and vote on something. But I want to just acknowledge the hard work that many people have put in on this issue that have brought us to this point. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. No, that's a good point. You're right. There was a lot of work done, obviously, way before we even came onto the scene. But we do have to take a motion on this, so I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation.
Chairman?
Yes, Ms. Stowers.
I move to adopt property tax rule 202.
Member Schaefer, I second that.
It's been moved and second. Ms. Davis, if we can please have a roll call.
Mr. Chairman, would you
Yes.
like for me to ask if there are any questions or comments from the public?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I thought, go ahead. Is there anybody on the line from the public?
AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there is anyone who's on the line who would like to make a public comment regarding this matter?
And ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make a public comment on the phone, press 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. You can withdraw your comment at any time by repeating the 1-0 command. And if you are using a speakerphone, please pick up the handset before pressing the numbers. Again, for public comment, please press 1, then 0 at this time. We have no one queuing up on the phone at this time. Please continue.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, would you like to proceed?
Yes, if we can go ahead and we have the motion that was made by Ms. Dowers and second by our Vice Chair, Mr. Schaefer. If we can go ahead and just take a roll call.
Chairman Vasquez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Schaefer,
Yes.
Member Gaines,
Aye?
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers,
Yes.
So that's unanimous. Ms. Davis, if you could please call our next item.
Our next item is G2, Proposed Amendments to Property Tax Rule 4662.500, presented by Ms. Sonia Yim of the Board of Equalization Legal Division. Ms. Yim, are you available to make your report?
Yes, I'm here.
Thank
Good morning,
you.
Chairman
Please
Vasquez.
speak up just a little bit louder so that we can hear you more clearly.
Sure, is this better?
Perfect. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and members of the board. This is Sonia Yim from the Legal Department. I'm here to recommend and request the board's authorization to begin the formal rulemaking process by authorizing publication of a Notice of Proposed Regulatory Action for proposed amendments to Property Tax Rule 462.500. The proposed amendments make the rule consistent with current law, namely Revenue and Taxation Code Section 68, which governs change in ownership of real property acquired to replace property taken by governmental action or eminent domain proceedings. And I'll be happy to answer any questions or provide any additional details. Thank you.
Thank you. I have just a couple of quick questions for you. My first one is, does the staff know the number of homeowners that are affected by this eminent domain or similar governmental action to which will change or will benefit them?
This is David Young, Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department again. We actually do not have an exact number of the folks that will be affected by it. In general, we get in the order of probably a couple of hundred per year that will use this provision to transfer their base year value from a home taken to a replacement. What this does is that for those folks that did not apply in a timely manner within the 4 years, it used to be that you foregone your opportunity to transfer that base year is gone. What this does is that it allows those folks that have already done so but have failed to report it timely an opportunity to get basically prospective relief and relief for 4 years back. So I believe it should help. It should help a good number of folks, although I believe that the majority of the folks that have had that qualified for this are probably fairly timely in applying for it. But this is more of an, I believe, more of an equity measure, just to make sure that if you didn't apply, you're not forever barred from getting this type of relief.
Thank you. So this is retroactive then, right?
It is. It is retroactive for 4 years.
Okay.
So, yes.
So, and then I guess my last question is, how would the homeowners that are affected by this rule know about the changes?
We've already published an LTA back in 2019, I believe, and it is on our website under our Q&As, our questions and answers, and most, not all, but I believe most assessors do have. This is applied at a local level. A lot of assessors have information also on their website on this change. So hopefully between our website, the LTAs, and the assessor's website, some folks who may have qualified will know, and hopefully they will apply for the transfer of the base year value.
Thank you. Members, any other questions?
If I could, this is Member Gaines.
Go ahead, Mr. Gaines.
And just on that, the informational aspect of this, because this is a great rule change that provides a relief for some of our homeowner constituents. So I'm just wondering, is there anything else that we can do so that homeowners are aware of the rule change? Because I know that we can do the LTA, and that pushes it out to the county assessors, and that's great. And if someone has the wherewithal to think about it and call their assessor, they can find out or go to the website. But is there something we can do that's broader than that, so that our constituents are aware of this change?
Sounds like Ms. Stowers wants to weigh in. Go ahead.
I just 100% agree with Member Gaines that it should be something that we can do broader than an LTA. And I would think that as a board, we should be able to do a press release explaining the rule and how it works so that the general public is made aware of it. I don't know if we need a motion for this, or if we can just direct our executive director to do some type of press release to inform the public.
I think that's a reasonable request. We can do two things. We can certainly grab the language and do a press release, and then, of course, make the information available on our website and also on the board members' website. So be happy to take that action.
That's a great suggestion, Member Gaines. Thank you, Ms. Stowers.
Thank you. Anything else, members? Hearing and seeing no more comments. Ms. Davis, is there anybody in the public that's is asked to speak on this item?
I don't have anyone that's been notified through the board proceedings division, but AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this matter at this time?
And ladies and gentlemen, once again, if you would like to make a public comment, please press 1, then followed by 0 at this time. There are no comments at this time. Please proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, what is your pleasure?
I'd like to entertain a motion so we could take a vote on this staff recommendation.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mr. Gaines.
Second.
And second by Ms. Stowers.
Thank you, Member Stowers.
Ms. Davis, if we can just call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Schaefer. Vice Chairman Schaefer.
I'm here. Yeah. I'm sorry, I was distracted.
We're calling a vote on item K1. I'm sorry, what is it? On the L?
It's G2.
On G2, thank you.
I vote yes.
Thank you.
Member Gaines.
Aye.
Member Cohen.
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers.
Aye.
So that's unanimous. Thank you all. Ms. Davis, if you would call the next item, please.
The next item is K1A through C, Executive Director's Report, presented by Ms. Lisa Renati, Board of Equalization Chief Deputy Director. Ms. Renati, are you available?
Good morning, members. This is Brenda Fleming. Good morning, Ms. Toya. I'm going to jump in line here. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I'm Brenda Fleming, Executive Director. Today's report, members, will provide updates on our priorities and accomplishments since last month's meeting. Members, if you will, with the Chairman's approval, please allow me to present the K1 items a little bit out of order. What I'd like to do is take up K1B first, which is the extension of time to complete the local assessment role. Then I'd like to take up K1C, which is extension of time for official acts, and then followed by K1A, which is the organizational update. Chairman, would you support that?
Yes, go ahead. Unless I hear anybody from any of the members objecting, I'm fine with it.
Thank you, members. Members, K1B is an extension of time to complete the local assessment role. The item does not require board action or direction. This is for informational purposes only. Revenue and Taxation Code 616 requires county assessors to annually complete their local assessment roles by July 1. Section 155 provides, however, that the board or its executive director may extend by 30 days the deadline for any official act by the assessor. In the case of public calamity, the deadline may be extended by 40 days. Section 155 also requires that the executive director inform the board of any such extension at its next regular meeting. Pursuant to the provisions noted above, this memo is to inform you that the Lake County assessor has been granted a 40-day extension, while San Benito County assessor has been granted a 30-day extension for completing their 2020 local assessment role. Members, for your reference, as of today, 27 local assessment role extensions have been granted. Proceeding to item K1C, which is the extension of time for official acts. This item does not require board action or direction. This is for informational purposes only. In accordance with Revenue Taxation Code Section 155 and State Board of Equalization Property Tax Rule 1051, the board or its executive director may grant extension of time for official acts required by rule or regulation. In the case of public calamity, the deadline may be extended by 40 days. Section 155 also requires that the executive director inform the board of any such extension at its next regular meeting. Pursuant to the provisions noted above, this memo is to inform you that the Assessment Appeals Board of Riverside, San Luis Obispo, and Los Angeles counties have requested and have been granted a 40-day extension for public calamity. Such extension is granted for all deadlines prior to January 1, 2021. Therefore, any official acts that must have been completed prior to January 1, 2021 must now be completed 40 days after the original date. Each 40-day extension period is to be counted from the first day after the original 2-year deadline date. Understandably, we are continuing to receive requests for extensions from other assessment appeals boards, which will be approved. Those will be reported on at the next meeting in July. As of today, members, for your reference, 4 extensions have been granted to the county assessment appeals boards. If you'd allow me then to return to K1A, which is the organizational updates. Members, beginning this month, updates on our operational priorities, and those are the ones that are noted typically on the operational dashboard, will be presented by Ms. Lisa Renati. As the Chief Deputy Director, Ms. Renati's responsibilities include overseeing the agency's daily operations and projects. Therefore, as you know, I welcome and greatly appreciate Ms. Renati's work in this area, and I'm very pleased to have her on board. I will, members, continue to provide the updates on board members and the agency-wide strategic priorities. And if you would allow me to give you some brief updates on about 6 items briefly for this month. The first is statewide informational hearing. As a refresher, members, in the summer of 2019, believe it or not, it's been about a year ago now, you agreed to hold a series of informational hearings to get input on issues that are important to the long-term health of California's property tax system. At our August board meeting, I reported on the importance of the board's leadership role in studying emerging state and local government issues that impact the property tax duties under our jurisdiction, and the importance of engaging in public discussions with taxpayers taxpayer advocates, local governments, policymakers, subject matter experts, and other interested parties, that those actions could result in policy development or problem-solving activities. The plan, if you recall, members, was to hold 4 informational hearings throughout the state, 1 in each of your districts. We have completed, actually, 2 of the 4 hearings. The first, if you recall, was in September of 2019 in San Diego and Vice Chair Schaefer's district. The second was in December of 2019 in San Jose and Board Member Cohen's district. The third is now being planned for July 23rd, 2020 in Board Member Gaines' district. And the topic will focus on the split roll initiative. Members, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting, different than the last 2, will need to be held via video and teleconference, but will be live streamed just as we're doing today. July 23rd, members, is the day 2 of the July board meeting, so details about the informational hearing will be included in the public agenda notice that's due on July 10th. Member Gaines, would you like to make comment?
Yes, I would. Thank you. Just to provide a few clarifying points, this is going to be on the new initiative that has qualified for the ballot for split roll of Prop 13. And I want to be really clear that it's intended to gain a deeper understanding of the split roll initiative. I'm not interested in taking a position. I'm not asking anybody to take a position. I'm not asking the board to take a position. I want to try to provide a neutral field where we can have people in support and people in opposition, experts, talk about the initiative so that we have a clear understanding of what those impacts are. And specifically, I know an area that I think we're all interested in, if it passes, how does that impact the implementation for the Board of Equalization itself and also our 58 county assessors? So I'm looking forward to that, and thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Member Gaines. And then further, members, the chairman's informational hearing is pending, and we'll keep you posted as we get more information. So thank you for letting me update you on the statewide informational hearings. If I can draw your attention, members, next to the state budget for fiscal year 2020-2021. As you know and has heard in the news, the legislature recently passed the main budget bill, which is Senate Bill 74 for fiscal year 2020-2021, and that was passed on June 15th. The governor and the Senate and Assembly's leadership reached agreement, actually, on the state budget yesterday. According to the governor's press release, more work remains ahead, but allows the state to move forward for the 2020-2021 fiscal year. The June 15th budget bill shows, which is important to us at this point, bill shows no change to the BOE budget in either funding or position. So at this point, our funding for the next fiscal year still stands at $30,790,000, and our positions remain the same at 192.6 positions. As you've heard in the news, one aspect of the budget deal involves furloughs for state employees. The budget deal includes actions to save approximately 10% in compensation, so it could freeze anticipated pay raises and impose furloughs. It's important to note that we have not received any official directives or direction or guidance from CalHR at this time. I'd like to point out, though, that the governor has stated that the passage of the HEROES Act or any similar legislation at the federal level could undo any need for compensation savings. We don't have much more information at this time, members, but of course I will continue to keep you updated as more information is available. If I could draw your attention to my third item, which is the governor's resilience roadmap and stage 2. And as noted, and I'm sure you've been all hearing in the news and the governor's regular COVID-19 reports, the state's COVID-19 website provides a lot of rich information, and we're now in stage 2 on the roadmap, which provides guidance on how low-risk workplaces, retail, manufacturing, offices, outdoor museums, etc., can begin to reopen. The governor's administration continues to provide State of California executive leadership with guidance for the COVID-19 response. There's a COVID-19 operational guidance, and that's being updated regularly as the response evolves. current guidance that we're looking at is on the use of respiratory protection, masks, and cloth coverings, instructions on social distancing, including signage for space designations for offices, conference rooms, elevators, and the like. State agencies have been asked, and I think I reported on this last month, have been asked to target at least 75% of our workforce continuing to telework, with each agency performing its functions under their specific continuity of government plans. BOE has no difficulty meeting this goal. Our workforce is teleworking successfully with rotational schedules to balance the number of staff in the office at any one time, complying with social distancing and other public health requirements. We are being very thoughtful to implement these changes as the health and safety of our staff continues to be, as you know, members, our number one priority. So we're doing fine in that area. There are no concerns, but I'll certainly continue to keep you posted. I'd like to draw your attention, members, to the next item, which is our HR delegation. As you know, as I reported in the last meeting, our progress has slowed due to the COVID-19 continuity of government priorities. However, I am pleased to report that my initial conversations with GovOps leadership has been very positive. There will be another meeting in the next couple of weeks. I will, of course, keep you updated on the outcomes of those discussions, but we are getting into some very specific and concrete material, and I'll certainly have, and my one-on-ones with you members can provide more detail. Moving on to my fifth of 6 items, which is our BOE strategic plan for 2020 through 2025. We are, I'm excited to report, resuming work on the agency's strategic plan. Ms. Renati and staff are developing the implementation activities, and that will outline for us the deliverables, the milestones, and timelines. Our strategic focus on rebuilding, revitalizing, and modernizing the state's property tax system is important to our agency and to you as a board. Last year, if you recall, Ms. Cohen's leadership, the board provided guidance and direction on board strategy to ensure that both the agency and the board's strategic plans were aligned. We will absolutely continue to work collectively together to move forward to make sure that our goals are achieved. I'm certain, members, that we're on the same page here, that it is our shared commitment to restore our agency to one that has for years received national recognition for innovation and first-in-class work, and from being recognized as an agency that has the only elected board. We've got a strong history, and my goal and my commitment is to do everything we can to commit to restoring our reputation and our brand. We're grateful this year for the partnership with Chairman Vasquez and the board, and Chairman Vasquez in your vision to create complementary plans that enables the board and the agency to move forward. And again, members, I'll continue to keep you updated on our progress, and we'll continue to work closely with you on the board members' strategic plan. And my last item, and I'm grateful today that Ms. Thompson is with us. The Taxpayer Rights the annual Taxpayers Bill of Rights hearing is proposed for the August board meeting. Ms. Thompson is responding to taxpayer calls and inquiries. Inquiries are being tracked and reviewed to help determine what additional information we can provide to assist taxpayers and others during this time. Ms. Thompson, as I mentioned, is here with us today, and then she'll give us more detail on her report later on the agenda. So, members, the plan is going forward that I will present, again, the high-level items that are board member priorities and agency-wide priorities, and then we'll be turning over to the executive team, Ms. Renati, the deputy directors, and chief counsel, an opportunity for them to provide their monthly updates on the operational activities in their areas. And with that, members, I will turn it over to Ms. Toya for Ms. Renati's next portion.
Thank you. Thank you, Executive Director. At this time, we'd like to introduce Ms. Renati, Board of Equalization Chief Deputy Director. Ms. Renati, are you available?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I am Lisa Renati, Chief Deputy Director. Today's report will provide updates on our operational priorities dashboard since last month's meeting. It should be noted that COVID-19 has required a shift of our priorities. Consequently, work on some of our operational priorities has been temporarily interrupted. However, staff has done an extraordinary job of adjusting and continues to make progress on the priorities, as well as the many new demands created by COVID-19. Members, if I could direct you to item number 4, Office Relocation Project. I am happy to announce that the work on the new BOE headquarters, Natomas office, has officially begun. We anticipate the project will be completed in December 2020. The next item is number 5, ACA 2. There is no change to the bill, which is currently in committee. Mr. Durham will provide an update regarding this bill in his upcoming Legislative Research and Statistics Division Chief's report. The next item is number 6, AB 2330. No changes have been made to this bill, which remains in committee. Mr. Durham will also provide an update on this bill in his upcoming report. And the last item is number 8, recruitments. As of this month, we currently have 139 of our 192.6 positions filled. Of the 53 vacancies, 29 positions, or 54%, are in the recruitment phase. We have noted progress in our recruitments and expect to see an increase in filling our vacancies as the remaining key management positions are filled. Thank you for your attention. This concludes my report.
Thank you, Ms. Renati. Members, any questions?
If I could.
Go ahead, Mr. Gaines.
Member Gaines, yeah, thank you. I just want to thank Executive Director Fleming. I'm just seeing a lot of progress, and I'm encouraged by that. And I know it's difficult to move things forward in a bureaucracy, and you're getting it done. So I just want to highlight that I know that we've hired a couple more attorneys. I know that we just heard Deputy Director Renati speak. That was a new hire, and that you're working on other positions, and that you've got a lot in progress. So it's just good to see that we are making that progress, and encouraged about the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Gaines. I appreciate your positive words and your kindness, and I give kudos to staff because they are rolling up their sleeves and trying to make their bureaucratic process as smooth as we can, as smooth and efficient as we possibly can. So we appreciate your support, members.
Anybody else? Seeing no other is that Ms. Cohen?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I too just want to acknowledge the Executive Director's leadership. It's been quite honestly transformative to watch you grow and push through in a very short period of time of taking the helm of the Board of Equalization and guiding us through some really choppy waters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. I appreciate your kind words.
Thank you. Members, we don't have to take an official vote here, but let me just ask Ms. Davis if there's anybody in the public that wishes to make a comment on this item.
Thank you, Chairman. The Board Proceedings Division has not received any public comments, but if we can check with the AT&T moderator, if you can please let us know if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this matter at this time.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make a public comment on the phone, press 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. Again, for public comment on the phone, please press 1, then 0 at this time. We have no one queuing up on the phone. Please continue.
Members, that concludes this month's report.
Thank you, Ms. Fleming, and also your staff. Like you mentioned, you guys did a very good job, and I think it was a very informative report. And listening to my members, it sounds like they're all pretty satisfied with the progress we're making. And with that, let me just have Ms. Davis call our next item.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next item is K2, Chief Counsel's report presented by Mr. Henry Nanjo, Chief Counsel. Mr. Nanjo, are you available?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Honorable members, Chairman Vasquez, Vice Chair Schaefer, again, honorable board members. This is my quarterly Board of Equalization Legal Department snapshot status. There's a little PowerPoint that I'm going to be going through. The second page is the legal department team composition, and you're probably familiar with our team names by now. but in the next several months, I'm going to try to introduce you to some of our other team members. You had an opportunity to hear a presentation this morning from Ms. Sonia Yim, Tax Counsel 3 from our Southern California area, and Lawrence Lin, one of our new tax counsels from the Sacramento office. So hopefully, and obviously you're well familiar with Mr. Richard Moon, my property tax expert, so we'll be trying to cycle some of the other legal team members to the board members so that you can get to know them as well. The only change from our last report is I'm pleased to announce that we have joining us Attorney 3, Jeanette Banzon. Ms. Banzon has a lot of administrative and some litigation experience, and she's come on board to assist me with litigation matters. The good news about Ms. Banzon is she's also a licensed CPA, so she has some background with property tax, and we hope to integrate her into that side of the business and give us some support along those lines as well. But already she's been a big help to me to help manage the litigation that the board has and has been having ongoing for a number of years. As far as other recruitments, they have progressed a little more slowly than anticipated, unfortunately. We have 2 tax counsel positions that we are currently actively recruiting and hope that we will get some good candidates from this recruitment. I have included this slide from my last presentation to next slide to talk about the scope of the legal department and the wide scope of areas, variety of subject matters that the legal department is responsible for. On slide number 4, that's the metrics for the first quarter of this year from January to March 2020. The legal department has handled a total of 272 different types of assignments. One of the things you may notice is there has been quite a spike in the Public Record Act requests. I have one attorney who's now pretty much dedicated to responding to and helping collect information for Public Records Act requests. As you may know, for Public Act requests, we need to make sure that the appropriate information is given, confidential information is not inadvertently released. So I have an attorney who is pretty much looking at that. Don't know if it's from the fact that people are at home and have more time to think about Public Records Act requests, but we have definitely seen a quite an increase in that. In addition, our team wrapped up the state assessment season at the end of December 2019, and that again takes the focus of the legal department because almost all the staff, if not every single legal department staff member, has to play a role in the state assessed property tax division appeals. Now that that is complete at the end of December, we were able to focus on some other buckets of work. And under technical advice, letters and memos have changed. Our reports have shown that we've completed 5 from January and through March of 2020. Again, that's because of an additional other workload has kind of increased, and we've had to compensate for that workload shift. On page 5 of the PowerPoint, there are categories and descriptions and examples. Some of these categories have been on my presentation before, so I'll quickly go through the descriptions and take a little more time on some of the categories we want to highlight this quarter. I've already mentioned Public Records Act requests. That is, again, a big source of workload right now. In addition, administration, assignments related to Public Record Act requests, disclosure, and other types of administrative matters. Representative examples include research and information on Bagley-Keene requirements for public meetings as temporarily adjusted by the governor's coronavirus-related executive orders, and research and related work on the effects of the governor's shelter-in-place on agency work and the workforce. As you can imagine, a lot of changes have occurred due to COVID-19 and some of the emergency orders. So agency has had to look at the governor's executive orders, kind of look at what's happening at the counties and make sure that we're making the appropriate changes and adjustments at the agency level. So that's what we're doing. The other area is publications review. We are asked by Property Tax Department to review surveys, provide legal analysis of legislative analysis, assessor handbooks, letters to assessors, and annotations as well. Representative examples, again, include county surveys for legal issues, working with the County Assessed Properties Tax Division to address both staff and assessor concerns. We also provide legal review of county assessor-only letters, and also verify that the board's ability to grant extensions are granted appropriately and in conformance with Rtc Section 155. Regulations. These are, you heard two of the regulations that we have brought to the board, and thank you, board, for approving those regulatory changes. We are still in the process of going through our BOE regulations and making sure that they're consistent with any legislative changes that have occurred, and also looking to an eye to make improvements and anything else we need to do. So we're kind of going through the RTC and making sure that our regulations are in good shape. The other area is technical advice. We are providing advice to counties who've reached out, county assessor's office who've reached out with questions about assessment appeals filing deadlines and various issues along those lines. With legal entities and exemptions, this is quite a significant part of the inquiries that the legal department gets. We advise nonprofits on various organizational structures and how to use such structures to basically engage in more low-income housing and make sure that those entities operate with the benefit of any exemptions along those lines. The other area that the legal department participates in is in presentations, and we had some presentations that we provided at the Eagle Lodge West Conference. This was a annual conference by the California Lawyers Association Taxation Section, and two attorneys participated in this event. Basically, in this conference, practitioners and government get together to roundtable topics, kind of Vegas style. There's no attribution, and the idea is to try to come up with fixes or policies that would benefit taxes as a whole, or the collection of taxes as a whole in California. This is participated by both BOE and CDTFA. In addition, FTB's there, and usually I believe the Office of Tax Appeals is also there as well. Property tax topics included this year new construction exclusions for active solar energy systems and discussions on base year value transfers for replacement properties. In addition, we were asked to participate in a continuing education webinar. One of our attorneys participated in a webinar discussing the impacts of COVID-19 on state taxing agencies. And again, that was in the second quarter of 2020, and that was participated in by FTB, CDTFA, BOE, and OTA. On slide 10, we go through the workload, workload projections or notes. Here, like many state agencies and our fellow departments within the BOE, the legal department has shifted primarily to teleworking as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. I want to especially thank the legal department attorneys and staff for rising to the challenge of transitioning to a remote work environment and continuing to put forth admirable efforts to support the agency and its taxpayers, as well as all the divisions. On slide 11, That's kind of what's in the legal department queue currently. Again, there's 33 technical advice items that we're trying to get to, 10 PRAs. That provides kind of the bulk of the work that we have coming up. We'll have final statistics for the second quarter at the next legal update. And we're looking forward to continuing to work on our response times, and hopefully the addition of additional staffing will help us in the near future. Just a note for Board Proceedings Division, as I am still the acting chief of the Board Proceedings Division, we are still trying to operate with the staff that we have. We are currently in active recruitment on an SSA to replace a promotion that occurred. That's going to help us out, but Ms. Joanne Richmond has helped us as a retired annuitant, and she's very familiar with Board Proceedings Division, so she's been invaluable in assisting me to keep that division going. Again, I want to thank the Board Proceedings staff for their hard work and extra efforts in making teleconference meetings and the additional meetings this year in supporting the board and just trying to make this go. A lot of the Board Proceedings staff is also teleworking most of their time, so they've had to make quite an adjustment. They're a very paper-oriented division, and trying to convert that so that they can work remotely has been a challenge, but they've done an admirable job, and we're still making progress every day. With that, that's my legal update. Oh, I'm sorry. Two other items. As I mentioned, we're still going forward on the rules for tax appeals. We're going through that, and we'll be bringing you regulatory updates as necessary. In addition, I have one attorney who's also dedicated as part of his assignment to working on making the appropriate updates on the Form 700 regulations for the division. It's been a little challenging because we're still short-staffed in legal, and with the extra board meetings, that's created a little more additional work, that and the changes that we've had to adjust to COVID-19, but we hope to bring that to the board by the end of this year as well. So that is the legal report for this month, and if you have any questions, I'm available to answer any questions.
I just have one quick one, and then I'll ask the members. You mentioned that there's been a spike, obviously, in the Public Records Act request. Well, how does that compare to last year?
I would say easily it's probably 4 times what we got last year. Wow. We're getting in a quarter what we used to get in the course of the entire year.
Oh, wow. So that's a pretty big jump, yeah.
Yeah.
Members, anybody else have any questions?
Member Gaines, if I could.
Gaines, go ahead.
I want to thank Henry Nanjo for that great presentation as Chief Counsel. And I just, I want to go through just briefly here, because I know that you've hired a couple additional attorneys. Can you give me just a little overview of how many have been hired? I know that it looks like there's 2 that are in recruitment. And then where do we need to be in terms of being fully staffed? Because I know when AB 102 passed and there was the split and the creation of CDTFA, we lost a lot of our attorneys. Can you just give us an overview of kind of where we were and where we are now and where we're going? Just from the staffing standpoint.
So as the board members may know, at the start of what we refer to kind of casually as BOE 2.0, right after July 1st, 2017, the legal staff was quite impacted. The board actually only had 2 relatively junior tax counsels at that point. They did not have a chief counsel. I came on board in October of 2017, and then in February of 2018, I believe, we got our property tax attorneys back, which gave us, if I remember correctly, 4 additional attorneys. Due to retirements and various things, 2 of those have moved on, but we have been able to backfill some of those with Mr. Lin for one and Ms. Banzon for another. We have 2 tax counsels currently in recruitment, and then I believe we are in the process of trying to get approval for an additional either tax counsel or tax counsel 3. That will bring us to, I would say, at that point, we are 3 attorneys short and maybe a staff person short of what we would need to be fully staffed.
Okay.
So kind of bottom line, rough ballpark numbers, I think we're operating at about 60% of what we should be.
And when you started, where were we?
When I started, we were at 2 tax counsels, and that was it, and myself.
Okay. All right. So we're making progress, and you've got some recruitments that are active. That's great. And then on this workload metrics, you gave us the breakdown of like Public Record Act requests and administration regulations. Is that are we gaining on the backlog? Are we making progress in terms of taking that backlog down and reducing it?
Candidly, we were making some progress at the end of last year, but unfortunately with COVID-19 and all the chaos, if I can use that term, that created, we've had to kind of focus on making sure that, that telework and remote working, and that we have the resources, and it's being done according to all the personnel laws and what have you. So we've had other issues that kind of distracted us. So this quarter, I would say that we've probably slipped a little bit, but we hope that now that a lot of this is under our belt, that we'll be able to get back on track and start chipping away at that backlog as well.
Do you see that efficiency increasing as your staff is more familiar with working out of the home and getting access to files electronically? I'm just curious as to whether we can achieve similar efficiencies with attorneys working at home.
Yes, we can, and I definitely, to be very candid with you, the attorney staff has been very good about taking to teleworking. That change hasn't been that difficult for them. They've impressed me with how well they've taken to teleworking and making sure that they can get their work done. So I don't think that was as much of a challenge as just the additional work that COVID-19 has caused, because we've had to help make sure that the agency is doing work in a new way according to the laws, if you know what I mean.
Okay, very well. Well, thank you for all the positive steps that you're taking forward. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Thank you. It looks like Ms. Cohen has some questions. Go ahead, Ms. Cohen. Member Cohen.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Nanjo. Can you hear me okay?
Sure, thank you.
Good. I was wondering if you're able to provide us with some insight into the nature of the public requests that are coming in to your office.
They have been all across the board. They have been about documents that may have existed, historical documents, old case files. In some cases, they are about issues that are either perceived with a board member's office or some point of information that they're seeking from a board member's office. As you may know, we work closely with the board members whenever there's an inquiry related to the board member. But they aren't in any particular category. Candidly, they are all across the map.
Okay. And as it relates to the requests coming in from the assessor's office, I may have missed it, but how are we doing in our response time to assessor's requests?
We give the assessor's requests the highest priority, both any requests from the assessors and the assessment appeals boards, if they write to us. Candidly, our response time has been longer than I would like, but generally speaking, we try to work with them and get things to them by their deadlines or whatever time frame they need. Obviously, that kind of varies depending on the complexity of the issue and how easy it is to get an answer, but generally, those are our highest priority items that we try to address ahead of all the others.
Okay. What about, so there's no specific themes or anything that you're seeing or hearing from the public records requests?
Not really. There seems to be a higher number of old documents that people are asking about, whether it's a past case file or what have you, things of that nature. If I had to say one stood out in my mind, that would probably be them, other than the garden variety.
And I would imagine, Mr. Nanjo, the requests for those documents are related to our I guess, requirement to revamp our website to become in compliance with some legislation that the legislature passed about a year and a half ago. Is that the correct assumption I'm making?
That accounts for some of it, Member Cohen, but a lot of it, one of the things that historically the board has done is we've kept records for a long time. Sometimes for whatever reason, the records are still available even past our retention levels. So because we are kind of a storehouse of old documents, people are aware of that, and we get requests for a lot of old documents. And the challenge with those documents are, one, they're typically not easily found, and secondly, because they're older, we have to try to educate ourselves on the issues involved, make sure a confidential information isn't inadvertently received. So those seem to take longer periods of time to review.
All right. So I just want to acknowledge your report. I thought it was actually quite informative. Thank you. And thank you to your growing legal team, and welcome to the new members. And you guys are also doing an exceptional job during this really trying circumstances. I've got a question related to how we possibly are going to be moving forward into the future. I'd like to get your views on how the board can have closed sessions in this new environment. In this new environment of remote meetings and teleconferencing.
Yes, thank you very much for that. First and foremost, thank you very much for your kind words, both on behalf of myself and on behalf of my staff, and thank you for that question. As you may know, as the board members know, there's the closed session item was on the March agenda regarding legal matters, and because of COVID-19 and our fact that we've had to do this remotely, that was suspended. My intent was to place that back on the agenda once we reconvene in the boardroom. I don't think I imagined that we would have been remote this long, so now that we continue to meet virtually, and it looks like we may be doing that for some while, I have been researching various methodologies to perhaps have a closed session in our current configuration. I will be working with the chair. I have a couple of ideas, but we need to make sure, one, that it works, and two, that the board members have appropriate facilities in their offices to handle it this way. So we'll be reaching out to both the chair and to the board members with a couple ideas and inquiries to see if we can make one of these methodologies work. I acknowledge that the board has a desire to be briefed on all the legal matters before the board, as well as pertinent legal issues that have surfaced. We will definitely get that. That's a priority to me, and I will work, hopefully, fingers crossed, try to see if we can get our some sort of mechanism set up for possibly the July meeting, if not, definitely by August.
So
I think the.
So I just want to see if I can synthesize what I heard. So you're just saying that you're still working, figuring it out, and you'll come back to talk to us about it.
I actually, I'm a little further along than I was previously. I actually have one or two options that I just need to check out to make sure it works in our context. As the board members may know, what's challenging about this is we need to break and go into closed session, have the closed session in a confidential environment. But at the same time, because of the way the AT&T conference call works, we have to leave that open and put that on hold and then be able to go back to that and report out on the closed session. So it's kind of that dual mechanism that we're trying to make sure we can confidently have the discussion confidentially that doesn't accidentally bleed out into the public communication, if you will.
Okay. So I think we all appreciate the confidentiality that's preserved when we physically meet in a closed session in the Dronenberg room adjacent to the board chambers located at 450 N Street. What are your thoughts on how a confidential closed session can be held in this new environment of remote meetings versus via teleconferencing? I mean, do you have some specifics that you can share with us this morning?
It's going to be, we need to, the discussion that we had recently was possibly setting up another mechanism, whether that's a additional Microsoft Teams call with the board members or with through Zoom or some other mechanism, WebEx. That's what we're kind of exploring. Part of the challenge is, like I mentioned, Member Cohen, is the fact that we have to be able to leave the AT&T conference call open, but make sure that information isn't, for lack of a better term, overheard in that context and inadvertently broadcast to the public. The other item is on two of the litigated matters, we have outside counsel, in one case a deputy attorney general, and the other one an outside counsel, and I want to make sure that the mechanism works for them and they're able to get on and participate as well, because I'd like you to be able to hear from them and be able to ask them questions as well. So it's all these logistics that we're trying to work out.
All right, thank you. Do you know how other governmental agencies are addressing the challenges, having closed sessions where all members of the governmental body are not physically present in a location?
I have taken, part of my research has been inquiring with my colleagues and other governmental agencies, and there have been a variety of mechanisms. A lot of them are not doing closed sessions, so that seems to be the most common methodology that's occurring. But other ones are having actual physical meetings. They're doing a variety of things, and the idea that we came up with is kind of a synthesis of some other good ideas we've heard from other governmental entities.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no other questions.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Nanjo. That was a great presentation, and it sounds like, especially with the interaction we've had with the members, looks like we're making some progress. And I know we've had this conversation about closed session, and I know that's a delicate issue, and hopefully we can resolve that soon. But before we move on, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just saying, I'm hoping that one of these two methodologies will prove to be successful and we can implement it very quickly.
Thank you. I know we don't need a vote on this particular item, but is there anybody, Ms. Davis, in the queue that's from the public that wishes to speak on this item?
Let me check, Mr. Chairman. AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there's anyone who'd like to make a public comment regarding this matter at this time?
If you would like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. Again, you would press 1, then 0 on the telephone keypad. You have no one queuing up at this time. Please continue.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, you want to go ahead and call the next item?
Next item is K3, Property Tax Deputy Director's Report, presented by Mr. David Leung, Deputy Director of Property Tax. Mr. Leung, are you available? Mr. Leung?
Yes, I am.
Mr. Young, I apologize. Thank you so much. Go ahead, sir.
Of course. Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members of the board. My name is David Young. I'm the Deputy Director of the Property Tax Department. Today, I will bring before you some information on the status of pending and upcoming departmental issues. First of all, as reported during the last board meeting, the Property Tax Department has successfully transitioned to working remotely. Our offices are still open and continue essential functions that require physical presence, such as answering certain telephones, and receiving and processing mail. At the peak of our remote working, staff teleworked approximately 90%, and the remaining 10% was in the office. In light of the gradual reopening of the state, the department is reviewing the current telework policy and drafting plans to bring staff back in a gradual, safe, and efficient manner. That is ongoing. Next, I would like to cover the state assessed properties valuation process. Staff has mailed notices of unitary value and copies of the appraisal data reports to state assessees. If you will recall, last month the board adopted the unitary values for state assessees. So the assessees have been notified of their values, and they have until July 20th to file an appeal if they disagree and wish to contest their unitary values. Also, staff is working on the board roll of state assessed property and the private railroad car tax rolls. The work is going well. Staff actually will bring it before the board in the July board meeting for your action and adoption. Next update is on the Community Land Trust project. As you will recall, this project has been ongoing for a little bit, and this project deals with the assessment of low-income housing built on land trust properties. Under LTA 2020/008, guidelines were sent to interested parties, which included land trust representatives, county assessors, and other stakeholders on a guideline that for the assessment of that property, comments were received and due by March 20th. Staff is now working with most of the comments we received. We were able to accommodate and make adjustments in our guidelines. There is one remaining issue, and staff is working with interested parties, assessors, and community land trust representatives, and we hope to resolve that soon. When we are able to, we will bring the guidelines before the board for your action and adoption. So that project is ongoing. Next is the certificated aircraft project. As you will know, the board authorized the publication of the Property Tax Rule 202 just earlier in this meeting. Also with that project is the revision of Assessors Handbook 570, the assessment of commercial aircraft. This will be a long-term project. This handbook, it was first published in 1972. So there will be a lot to update. Staff has already started on the revision, but there is still much work to do. The projected timeline for this project is at least 1 year, and the majority of that work will be dedicated to the actual assessment, the actual valuation of aircraft. So once again, when that project is done, it will go through the interested parties process. Stakeholders will have the ability to comment and review our draft and submit comments. when that project is wrapped up, that will also be brought before the board for action and adoption. Hello?
We can hear you, sir.
Oh,
go ahead.
Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry. It was just very quiet. I just want to make sure I was still on. Okay. And the last item I wanted to update you on is the split roll initiative. Staff is reviewing the potential workload impact and working with county assessors and with the clerks of the board on the potential impact of the split roll. We are drafting an implementation plan as to what it would take to initially put that split roll initiative, should it pass, into actual effect. So we are working on that. We're drafting that. We're working with the Research and Statistics Department and also with legal on that. So that is a wide-ranging plan. It is under development right now. And we will continue to monitor the initiative as it goes towards this November 2020 ballot. That actually concludes my presentation. I am available for any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Young. Do we have any members who wish to speak on this?
Yes, Chair.
Vice Chair Schaefer.
Yes. The act you're talking about is going to be over 40 years of age, going on 50 years of age. Back in 1972, the aircraft world was quite a bit different than it is now. Like I used to see jumbo jets. I don't know that they exist anymore. Is there much of a change as you're noticing? I imagine the value of aircraft has really gone up exponentially. I'd just like to hear something about the aircraft industry we assess in 72 as opposed to today.
The assessment of aircraft, of course, with the passage of 791, and there are sections to be updated that relates to the assessment of the law. The valuation portions of it, that has been a long time in its revision. We anticipate, that's why we anticipate this to be quite a long project. We will work, the Assessors Association, the CAA, has an aircraft subcommittee. We will be working with them hand in hand in developing any guidance, any update that we may have. So no, you are right. It is a long time ago, and the valuation methods itself, whether it's a cost approach, an income approach, or a direct sales approach, the basics stay the same, but there are a whole lot of details in between those three approaches and the actual coming up with a value.
Thank you.
Of course.
This is Member Gaines. Could I?
Go ahead, Mr. Gaines.
Yeah, thank you. I want to thank Dave Young for bringing this forward. I am just curious, you talked about working remotely, and can you give us an idea of how that's going? Henry just helped us shed light on how that transition is occurring, and I'm wondering how it's coming along in your department.
Of course, I'd be more than happy to. I will have to admit, the transition to working remotely was relatively abrupt. In the span of just about a week, we went from about 10% of our staff working remotely to about 90% of our staff working remotely. That transition, it was a little bit tough. We scrambled, and with the support of CDTFA, TSD, their IT department, they were able to get us the hardware that we needed, the laptops and the computers and whatnot. It takes to work remotely. It took a little bit of a culture shift for folks to be able to work from home. A lot of them actually had to learn how to use some software. I think most people now, if they were not proficient in Teams in the beginning, They are very proficient in it now, and how to contact, hold virtual meetings, how to exchange documents and work on them in real time together. So that was a little bit of a learning curve, but I have to hand it to staff. They did very, very well. We had a little bit of a slowdown, and we picked up steam, and we were able to do a whole lot of work remotely. Right now, there has been a little bit of shift in the work. The valuation part of the work for the state assessed properties is completed, and so we're shifting. We're looking at the private railroad cars, and we're looking at completing the actual board role. So there is a little bit of a change, but I think everybody's handling it really well. As for the county assessed side of the house, some of it is actually worked out well. At least on 2 of the programs, we've actually made some ground up. We've been able to work a lot of some of the older cases because we found some efficiencies at working from home. So hopefully we can continue that. But overall, the shift has been good. It's been a learning process. I don't know in the long run exactly what our work environment will look like. I don't know. I don't think it'll be the 90% or so that we are teleworking now, but I will not be the same as when we first walked into this COVID-19 in the middle of March.
Sure. Do you think we're keeping pace with workload, or is there a learning curve that has slowed us down and over time we'll catch up, or what are your thoughts on that?
To be honest, there was a little bit of a slowdown with the learning curve, but I think we've more than passed the hump, and I think we've made up for it. There are a couple lessons learned. Some of it is trying to figure out how to digitize more and more of our work. Much of our work is still on hard paper and hard files. As we move forward, we look forward to finding efficiencies there in digitizing and having our work be amenable to just people collaborating online. So,
right.
So there are some lessons learned there, and we're trying to figure out how to capitalize on those for the long run.
Good. I'm happy to hear that you're also focusing on, what do we do in the event of the passage of split roll, so that I know we're all trying to prepare for that, but I just appreciate the update and as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It looks like Member Cohen has her hand up.
Thank you. Mr. Young, thanks for your report. I was wondering if you're able to provide any insight on the current status of our scheduled surveys.
Of course.
Are we delayed in completing the surveys that were in the pipeline? Did we delay any surveys? Could you update us on that,
please? Of course.
Thank you.
I will be happy to, Member Cohen. Thank you for the question. Initially, there was a little bit of delay when this COVID-19 first happened and the shelter in place took effect. A lot of the assessors' offices and some of our field work was delayed because one, we weren't sending folks out, and 2, neither did the assessors want us in their office. But now we are learning, and with the cooperation and support of the assessors, we're figuring out ways in which we can still get a lot of our information. Our surveys are basically compliance audits, and some of the information we can either get electronically, we can get files swapped, and some of our other components, like our staff interviews of key personnel, we're figuring out ways to do that remotely, just as we're having this conversation by phone. So there was a little bit of a slowdown, but we are figuring out ways around it right now. So we are picking up some steam, if you will. In the last actually month or so, we've actually been able to push a little bit of our work that is already started through a little quicker. And bear in mind also too, this is typically, even without COVID-19 and the restrictions, this is usually the time when we're not in the assessor's office a whole lot. They are closing their assessment roles right now. We are at the tail end, the two-thirds way through June. If you will also recall, Ms. Fleming reported earlier that 27 counties have asked for an extensions to turn in their role. So they have until the end of July. So right now it's doubly imperative that we figure out different ways in which we can get our work done. The assessors are delayed and ask for more time to finish their role, and we've got to still figure out how to get our surveys completed even with that. So.
Okay, I have another question for you. So I'm just attempting to just kind of wrap my arms around how the shelter-in-place orders are impacting the significant functions of the organization. I'm sure assessor's office have not been available due to no fault of their own. But what is the plan to address any changes that have occurred to our survey timelines?
Our survey timeline in publication, we've been trying real hard to make sure that we are able to meet those timelines. Mm-hmm. And to be quite frank with you, there is, at least not that I could find, a provision that allows us to extend our own timeline. So if there is, I have yet to find it. But we are trying to keep on top of our work in progress. What we have done is we have a year in which to complete. So a lot of the time, at least in the last 2 months, we've actually had to delay the start of our surveys. Mm-hmm. I know at least for at least 2 counties, we've had a start date scheduled, and then the shelter-in-place restrictions came into effect, and we've actually had to delay. So we haven't actually started those.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chair, back to you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, Ms. Davis, do we have anybody in the public that wishes to speak on this item?
AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this matter at this time?
And ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. Again, that is 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. We have no one queuing up at this time. Please continue.
Thank you. Well, thank you again, Mr. Young, for that informative report. We really appreciate it, and especially for the questions and answers you were able to address as well. Ms. Davis, if you would please call the next item.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we are almost at noon. If you'd like to take a break, we can consider taking one now, or if you wanted to continue with the agenda, we can move forward.
What's the wishes of the members?
I'm happy to take a break now.
You want to take a break? Okay. So we'll go ahead and take a break now. Is 15 to 20 minutes good? What's the wishes of the members?
Sure. That sounds good. 15 or 20? I'm flexible, whatever the.
Just as long as it's longer than 5.
Longer than 5, okay. What do we say, Mr. Schaefer?
Let's do 15 instead of 20. You know, whenever we do 15, it always overruns anyhow.
All right, we'll go 15. So we'll take a recess now and be back at 12:15. Thank you. And there's Member Gaines. All right, we'll go ahead and let's reconvene. Ms. Davis, if you'd call the next item, please.
The next item is K4, Legislative Research and Statistics Division's report presented by Mr. Mark Durham, Chief of the Division. Mr. Durham, are you available?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chairman Vasquez and honorable members. I'm Mark Durham of the Legislative Research Division, and I'll provide you an update on the legislation. First off, like I always do, we're going to be talking about the key legislative dates that we're tracking. So June 19th was the last day for the Assembly to pass bills introduced in that House, and then they also started their summer recess. On June 26th, this is the last day for the Senate to pass bills introduced in that House. July 2nd is when they both reconvene. On July 13th, both houses reconvene for the summer recess. July 2nd is when the Senate summer recess begins. And on August 31st, that's the last day for each house to pass bills. And then on September 30th, that's the last day for the governor to sign or veto bills. Moving on to the legislative bills of interest to the BOE. As you heard earlier today, ACA2, the Nazarian bill, and also AB 2330 is the Nazarian bill. Both of those are still listed as active in the Assembly Rev and Taxation Committee. The last day for ACA2 to qualify for the November 3rd ballot is June 25th. AB 2330, again, it's listed as an active bill, but the last day for the bills to pass was June 19th. Moving on to AB 3373, this is the Assembly Rev and Tax Committee bill. This allows for county board supervisors to create as many assessment appeals boards as the county deems necessary. This has passed over the Senate, and it's awaiting for the first read in the Senate. Senate Bill 1431, which is the Glazer bill, this is the disaster reassessment for properties affected by the COVID-19. This was held in committee on June 18th. And with that, that's my update. Does anybody have any questions?
Members, do we have any hands here? I don't see any hands up. It looks like Ms. Cohen. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Durham. I just wanted to see if you had any other intelligence regarding ACA2.
No, I really don't. We're just, like I said, the last day for the bill to qualify is on June 25th. And the Assembly could be called back. Looks like they're going to be called back on, I think it's the 25th, discussing the SB 425, I think it is. So that's the election bill, but there's nothing else on their agenda that I see.
Okay. All right. And I was just wondering if you heard anything related to our BOE budget as budget discussions are currently going on, if you have any insight there.
The only insight is really just what Ms. Fleming mentioned earlier this morning, is that for the BOE, the budget for our agency has not changed.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I have no other questions.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Member Gaines, if I could.
Member Gaines, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for your presentation. I appreciate it. And if you could just continue to stay on top of this, and if things change, if you could let us know immediately. I don't know if that's via an email, but it would be nice to know as we're getting to the end of the session that we're keeping a close eye on the ball, as things can change very quickly in the legislature. Thank you.
Exactly. No, we got a few eyes on it, but thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other hands, Ms. Davis, do we have anybody in the queue that wants to speak on public comment?
We've not received any public comments from the Board Proceedings Division, but AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this matter at this time?
And if you would like to make a public comment at this time, please press 1, then followed by 0. There are no comments at this time. Please proceed.
Thank you. This is just an informational item. Thanks again, Mark Durham, for bringing us up to speed and keeping us posted. It sounds like we're in a pretty good spot, especially with ACA 2. I guess it has 2 more days left officially. And with that, if we can just have Ms. Davis call the next item. Did we lose you, Ms. Davis?
I apologize, sir. The next item is K5, Taxpayer Rights Advocates Office's report, presented by Ms. Lisa Thompson, Chief. Ms. Thompson, are you available to make your report?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Vasquez and honorable board members. This is Lisa Thompson, Chief of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. I'm here to provide you with an update on the activities of the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office. One of the key tasks in advance of the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing has been completed. Posters and flyers completed printing, and a letter was distributed in hard copy to county officials statewide that are involved in the property tax system, notifying them of the hearing, requesting that they display posters and flyers in public areas of their office. County officials included assessors, tax collectors, auditor controllers, and clerks of the board. Approximately 83,050 flyers and 425 posters were distributed, with the largest quantity distributed to assessors. The mailing was completed on June 10th, 2020. Our website was updated to identify specific information on the 2020 Bill of Rights hearing for taxpayers and other interested parties to see. Generally, at the public hearing, taxpayers or county officials are welcome to provide comments on any items presented in the Taxpayer Rights Advocate's annual report or concerning an issue that a taxpayer may currently be working with the Taxpayer Rights Advocate Office on. It provides an opportunity for taxpayers to come before this elected board and have their voices heard. A letter to assessors will be issued shortly and posted on our website, which notifies assessors, staff, and interested parties of the hearing. Letters to assessors are distributed electronically to those on a subscriber list, and approximately 3,500 people are on the LTA subscriber list. That subscriber list is maintained by the Property Tax Department electronically. We will also be sending an email to county assessors asking them to add information to their website, notifying taxpayers about the Taxpayer Bill of Rights hearing on August 18th, 2020, and to provide a link to the TRA page on our website. In our email, we will ask if a county has information in other languages on their website that they incorporate notification of the availability for taxpayers to participate in the hearing on their websites in other languages, but that they could indicate that the hearing will be conducted in English. A few weeks before the hearing, we will reach out by email to taxpayer organizations, providing information on the purpose and format of the hearing, seeking their assistance in notifying members or taxpayers about the hearing. Last year, we reached out to the California Taxpayers Association, California Chamber of Commerce, California Society of Enrolled Tax Agents, Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, and Spidell Publishing. This email requested that they notify their members or taxpayers in any newsletters, podcasts, webcasts, or flash mails that they had. This year, we will reach out to those same 5 organizations, as well as another organization that we identified to expand our outreach. and that is to the California Society of CPAs. Additionally, in advance of this meeting, we will be issuing a press release. Last year, we reached out to these taxpayer organizations a few weeks before we issued this press release. Our goal is to issue this in the last week of July. And we look forward to the hearing. If there are any questions, unless there are any questions, this concludes my update. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, do we have any questions on the presentation? Ms. Cohen, I'd like to see your hand.
Thank you. I was just wondering if there's some specifics that Ms. Thompson can share with us, if there's any themes or types of questions that she's seeing, hearing, or experiencing, just so I can get a feel for what's happening within her department.
Well, recently, our office has been receiving a lot of phone calls regarding extensions for property tax payments, as well as questions if there would be an extension for the time period to complete base year value transfers under Section 69.5 that actually pertains to those that are age 55 or over, that are have sold their properties, and we're trying to transfer that base year value to another property that they are contemplating purchasing in the county that they sold in, or another county that actually accepts the transfers from other counties. So we have received those because there have been concerns. They're concerned because of COVID-19 that they won't be able to basically complete their base year value transfer within the 2-year time period. So we've been kind of responding to those. That was not addressed in a governor's executive order, and we have kind of advised taxpayers that it isn't just in statute. So the 2-year time limit that a person has either before or after the sale of their original property to buy a replacement property, it's in statute in the Revenue and Taxation Code Section 69.5, but it's also based on the Constitution. So it's in the California Constitution, Article 13, Section 2. So that, we believe it would require, a vote in order to do that. So we've advised taxpayers that there isn't an extension and that we don't have the authority to do that, or assessors don't as well. So those are kind of the calls that we've been receiving of late, about that. So.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any other members?
Questions?
James, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for your presentation, Lisa, and also just wanted to send my condolences your way about the passing of your mom. Very sorry to hear that. And lost my dad a year ago, my mom a few years ago, and that is not easy. So I hope you're doing well considering the circumstances.
Yes, it is really difficult. Thank you. Yes,
and I thank you for your report. I have probably some other questions for a later time, but appreciate the update that you've given. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing no others. Ms. Davis, do we have anybody in the queue for public comment?
The Board Proceedings Division has not received any public comments, but AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this matter at this time?
And if you wish to make a public comment, please press 1, then followed by 0. We have no public comments at this time. Please proceed.
Thank you. Thank you for that very informative presentation, Ms. Thompson. And also, I'd also want to share my condolences to your family for your loss. I I've also had the misfortune of losing both of my parents over the years. So I know it's tough when it happens. As much as sometimes, even though when they get up in their elderly years, people think that it's okay for them to pass naturally, but still when you lose a mom or a dad, it's difficult. With that, let me have Ms. Davis call the next item, please.
The next item is L2A, Board Member Initiatives, Board Member Strategic Planning Session. This item will be presented by Chairman Vasquez. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. And thank you, members. Let me just start off by, first of all, thanking you all for your hard work on COVID-19, the impacts, and for postponing our work on the strategic plan and the workforce plan while we developed solutions for the short-term COVID problems that we experienced here, or we're experiencing still. But I want to renew our commitment to our strategic plan and recap where we were when we last discussed this. Make any changes we want and reach a consensus on a go-forward outline for our next steps. To facilitate this, for our review, I sent you documents from our prior board discussion meetings and materials which were posted on the PAN as well. I'm hoping everybody received that. Specifically, the 3 items, the January 13th memo on strategic plan commitment and next steps that we used in the January 28th meeting to identify who would do what. The February 7th confidential memo on strategic plan, which was a summary of assignments documenting the results of our January 28th meeting. And then Member Cohen's February 20th memo on board member strategic plan recommendations, proposing some rewording, new action items, and a new 4th goal. To recap, the February 20th was the public discussion we had, and at that meeting, board members were asked to present any final edits to our draft strategic plan and to discuss the tasks each members would like to take on. Member Coleman submitted her edits in writing, which you all have. Unless any other members would like to submit edits today, I would like to do the two things today. And one of them is to confirm that the board accepts the edits from Member Cohen and confirms each member's task. If we adopt Member Cohen's edits, we will need to discuss which member would like to take on priority 4, which is the branding. And then secondly, I would like to discuss whether there are any additional priorities that need to be included in light of our COVID-19 public policy hearings. With that, do we have any questions or feedback from the, I see Member Cohen with their hand up. Go ahead.
All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for your leadership on the strategic plan. This was actually something that you suggested almost in day 1 of us gathering as a body. And you have true vision when it came to the creating a vision for the board strategically so that we can move as one body. You've been instrumental in ensuring that both the board and the agency develop strategic plans. This work, it's important because what it does is it establishes our collective path forward in rebuilding, modernizing and making the necessary investments in our organization and the board to ensure that we are really fairly and efficiently and effectively administering California's $70 billion property tax system in a fair way. As we discussed during our strategic planning session, the investment in and rebuilding of the agency must be our #1 priority. So I believe that we need to continue to ensure that the executive director, the agency's executive team, and the entire organization is properly staffed, properly resourced and properly resourced to administer the complex property tax system. And once we begin to achieve these goals, we will be better equipped to do our job as board members. So with that said, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the recommendations to the strategic plan, which were just proposed by the chair. Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Member Gaines, yeah. Could I just add in a comment briefly?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, so I just I want to thank Member Cohen for an extensive review and providing some detail, greatly needed detail, in terms of what we ought to be doing in terms of the board vision. And so I've had a chance to review it, and they all look like great opportunities for us to make sure that we are clear on what our vision is, and then, how do we execute it? And you're providing a lot of meat there in terms of what do we need to do to get from A to B. And then I think the branding effort is critical, something that we need to really dig into and make sure that we get implemented, so people know what we're doing and we're keeping them updated, and that we're reaching out to our constituents try to satisfy their needs. So thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Ms. Stowers, go ahead.
Yes, I agree. Ms. Cohen, you did an excellent job in having some detail on the board strategic plan. And I've always had a little struggle with the board strategic plan versus the agency. Now that I'm looking at the detail for the board strategic plan, there's a lot of action items that we're going to be directing the executive director and her team to carry out. And so I'm just concerned about the capacity of the director to complete some of these assignments. Perhaps the director could speak on those items.
Sure. Ms. Stowers, I don't know, something's happening with your mic because you're kind of breaking up, but I think we got the gist of it.
Yeah, I look like I'm breaking up.
It sounds a little better now, but.
Okay, let me readjust. Let me just say that, I support the strategic plan, but my main concern is there's a lot of action items on here that are being directed towards the executive director. And I'm just wondering about her capacity and her team's capacity to carry out some of these assignments. And so perhaps we can have the director speak to some of these items.
Sure. Is Ms. Flemings available?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you for the opportunity and thank you for the questions, members. I'm absolutely in support of the board and the agency's strategic priorities. I absolutely think they're aligned. As I mentioned in my comments this morning, we both have, commitments and shared interest in helping this agency succeed. I do see the board's strategic plan at a bit of a higher level, more at a statewide level, to make sure that we're modernizing our property tax system, making sure that we have the appropriate workforce capacity, et cetera. So it is, I'd like to work a little bit more closely with the board to flesh out some more of the specific details of the actions in their plan, and then I can align those with what we have in the agency's strategic plan. Then we can get a greater sense of what the additional workload would look like. I am hoping, and based upon what we designed for the agency's strategic plan, as I mentioned, that they should be aligned. So we should be able to leverage both to achieve maximum efficiencies. But again, we're just going through this material, so we're early on in this process. If the board would allow me to have some more time working with the chair and with each of the members on their specific assignment areas, we can get more detail, and then at a later date, we can come back and report what the impact would be and how we could move forward collectively.
Mr. Chair, if I may just compliment
go ahead,
Ms. Fleming said, and also from Ms. Stowers, we propose these ideas and these suggestions in concert with the executive director's feedback and direction. So we are in sync. I'm pretty confident that we're going to be on track remain in sync, and as we continue to accomplish these stated goals.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that,
Yeah,
Ms.
Ms. Stowers, you know, when I first looked at it, I first had the same reaction I think you had, you know, that I've always said from the beginning when we started this process that this is supposed to be a strategic plan for the board and not for the staff, specifically Ms. Fleming. But when I read through and looked at it a little more carefully, especially the recommendations that Member Cohen put out here on the executive director, I think it falls in line, because I think for us to move forward, I think we need to have a better understanding, one, of what resources we do have available, and some of the budget items as well that'll come up, I think, in the discussion. Because I think for many of us, we're still a little in the dark in terms of what is the capacity. And I think Ms. Fleming kind of hit it on the nail just now too, that I think as we begin to dialogue a little bit more closely on these issues, especially these priorities, I think we'll have a better handle, and then we can come back and report back to the board in terms of where there might be some gaps or where we maybe need to shore up some more, whether it's a budget item or just resources that we can collaborate with, so the board itself can move forward with its objectives here.
This is
Schaefer, member. Vice Chair Schaefer, go ahead.
Yes, Chair Vasquez, when we get to considering resources and branding, I would like to participate. I have a chief deputy who is well steeped in public communications and would bring a lot to it. Would like to work with Member Gaines and his staff too. Just be assured of our staff's full cooperation, because I know that there's a great talent there that is important to the state.
Thank you for that. You know, that I was kind of envisioning now that Mr. Gaines has his new chief of staff, who I understand comes from that background and expertise, to kind of take the lead, and then it looks like Vice Chair Schaefer has some resources that he could lend to that. And I'm assuming we're talking about the goal number 4 that Member Cohen is introducing, which I think is something that we really need, the whole branding piece.
That would be great. Wonderful. I'd love to work on it.
Yeah. Great. Let me just go back to the maker of the motion real quick, Member Cohen. When you made the motion, were you specifically including all the 4 goals, or were you just talking about goal 1 that we're talking about now? All 4? Perfect. So members, we're looking at all 4 of these goals that are before us now with the edits that were made. Ms. Stowers?
Thank you. I do agree with all the 4 goals. I just have another clarification on goal 1B2 regarding the quarterly reports on constitutional functions carried out by CDTFA and the State Controller's Office. I would like to get some clarification. Are we talking about functions that they're carrying out on the behalf of the Board of Equalization? If that's the case.
That's the way I'm reading it, unless others are looking at it differently.
I just wanted to chime in here. Yes, Ms. Stowers, that is correct.
I'm not aware of any functions that the State Controller's Office is carrying out on behalf of BOE.
Okay. Well, we discussed this matter at our spring session last year. Maybe Ms. Fleming could chime in.
Yeah, so I think, thank you for the opportunity. And again, I think, we definitely should have the subsequent discussions that allows us to really flesh out the detail. But there are some functions that the Controller's Office performs. It's not specifically dedicated specifically for the BOE, but there are some accounting and other functions, payroll functions, that the Controller's Office does for all state agencies. But again, just to give us an opportunity to bring the clarity to it, we can circle back, we'll get the detail, and we can start to, as we look at the implementation plans that would be associated with these, with this higher level plan, we get a little bit more detail, then we can call out what the specific roles are and how to respond accordingly.
I appreciate that clarification. I'm prepared to vote on all items, but note that I'll be voting no on that item because I do not I know that the State Controller's Office is not performing anything specific to BOE as it relates to the current structure and all other items that the State Controller Office does for all state agencies. We already prepare reports. It's already on our public website. So I will be voting no on that particular item there.
Ms. Stowers, I have a question for you just as a follow-up. You say that the Controller's Office doesn't perform specific functions on behalf of the BOE. I think Ms. Fleming was talking about some.
Yeah, I said specifically as
non-specific.
Yeah, we do things for all state agencies when it comes to fiscal.
Right.
And that's the part that I said we do those functions, and we already prepare reports, and they are made available on our website. So I'm taking exception to saying that you want additional reports that's highlighting BOE, when if you want to know what's going on from the State Controller's Office, just go to seo.ca.gov and go to state reporting, and you will see all the reports and even the transferring of money. So I think this is a duplicate request, and it's not needed.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me, well then, you know what, Ms. Stowers, since it looks like you want to isolate that 1B2?
Yes.
You're comfortable with everything else, right?
Absolutely.
So why don't we do this? If the maker of the motion and the seconder are okay with it, with a friendly amendment, can we exclude on this motion 1B2?
Well, I'm a little
It's up to you, either way.
I mean, Ms. Stowers certainly is one important vote, but one vote. I don't know what the other members are and how they feel. I don't believe I'm in agreement with Ms. Stowers. And you heard from the executive director. Maybe we can ask Ms. Fleming to comment again on the relationship between the Controller's Office and the Board of Equalization. But I think this is a semantics issue, and I would not like to peel them apart. I would like to keep all four together.
Understood.
So perhaps at this time, if you don't mind, Mr. Chair, may I ask Ms. Fleming to again comment on this particular topic, just to reiterate what she said for clarity.
Go ahead, Ms.
Thank you
Fleming.
again. Thank you for the opportunity. So specifically on 1B1, if that's the item that is in question, or I'm sorry, 1B2. For 1B2, I think that probably the cleanest way, if I may, members, is to really get down into the detail, and we can come back to you to clarify what we have by statute, the responsibilities that the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration by statute provides the agency with some administrative and HR functions, et cetera. And we have agreements in place, interagency agreements in place that defines the scope of those services. From that perspective, we do not have a similar agreement or sort of a service level arrangement between the BOE and the State Controller's Office. However, the State Controller, as the Chief Fiscal Officer, has the responsibility for fiscal responsibilities. So there is a relationship as it relates to our accounting and other fiscal responsibilities. There are some related specifically in the area of clearly payroll. So there are some functions that the Controller's Office provides to all state agencies. What I'd like to do is drill down a bit more on this and really get clarity to share what's available to us, and then see if that aligns with the members in terms of the specific reporting information you're looking for. We similarly have a relationship with the Department of Finance where there is that kind of financial interaction and lots of reports. So I really want to get my hands wrapped around when you're talking about fiscal kind of functions and reports. There's some integrations there that we might want to look at. Not so much what, more importantly, what you're looking for, but how deep do you want to go, and what do you want covered in those quarterly reports. Fundamentally, members, I don't have a problem providing quarterly reports. I think those are reasonable, administrative and management reports for my office to provide for you, so I have no problem with it. Again, I'm just restating, let's be clear about what you're looking for so we make sure that we can provide the right information. Ms. Cohen, does that clarify?
Yes, I have a specific.
Ms. Cohen, go ahead.
Thank you. I have a specific question. Does the Controller have a role What about the insurance specifically with the insurance program?
Yeah, similarly, so we have a relationship and responsibility for the tax on insurance, so we can provide more information on that. There usually is not as much activity, and one of the things that I committed to last year is to start to extract more of that information and provide some more data on both the tax on insurance programs and the alcoholic beverage tax, so that we can start to include that in the quarterly reports. The data is a little different, and it's not as the data is different and definitely different than property tax data. And we now are having staff on board, so we have more capacity to report on that. So I'll be more than happy to include that in the quarterly reports.
So, colleagues. Thank you, Brenda. So colleagues, really my objective is to ensure that we're discussing it, that it's transparent, that we're not overlooking anything. This is not to create more work or have an undue workload burden for controller staff in any way, or even directing them to do it, to go above and beyond. But this is an integral part of our role as board members to be transparent again, to share the information. The controller may have one audience and we may have another. There may be some overlapping. I don't know the answer to that, but I still don't think that that what I'm requesting is unreasonable. I do think that it's a matter of semantics, and I hope that you'll support me. I understand, Ms. Stowers, you're uncomfortable voting on it at this time, and that's perfectly fine.
Mr. Chair, I appreciate.
Yes, go ahead, Ms. Stowers.
I appreciate the comments from Ms. Fleming and Ms. Cohen, and it could just be a needing to have a better understanding on what the controller does on the constitutional side for all state agencies, and what the controller's role is when it comes to tax on insurance, just like the Department of Insurance role when it comes to insurance and the franchise tax role. I think what Ms. Fleming said is best. I can vote yes. First, let me clarify that. With this discussion, I'm willing to vote yes, but with the understanding that there will be some additional background work from Ms. Fleming and company before we start pushing out these quarterly reports, because we may find that we don't need them.
Yeah, Member Gaines, could I come?
Member Gaines, go ahead, Member Gaines.
Yeah, I support all the discussion above. I think that Member Cohen raises a good issue, and working with Executive Director Fleming and getting clarity on some of these programs that are really being managed by other agencies. And wouldn't it be nice to get a regular update in terms of what's happening with the gross premium tax, what's happening with the excise alcohol taxes? And I think we've had reports, but it's been a long time ago. And right. I think we need to get that front and center. And so continue to support the motion and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, members. Again, we can start to provide reports, and I think it would be helpful as a part of the background and the preparation for this. We can provide more background and show really a map of what the relationships are with these other state agencies, and where we have agreements with them, actual formal agreements in place, and what those agreements entail, and really what work product or information we're getting from them. The two that are specifically in our jurisdiction, of course, in addition to property tax, is going to be those with alcoholic beverage and the tax on insurers. So those, for sure, we should include those in our regular reporting. Again, on the controller's office, it's a little bit of a different relationship. So I think it would be, as I mentioned before, prudent for us to just clarify what the information request is, and then we're more than happy to provide it if it's easily available to us. So I look forward to working with you on it.
Well, go ahead,
Chair. Yeah, Member Gaines, through the chair. I just can't emphasize it enough, and I'm glad we're having this discussion. But if anything goes wrong with that gross premium tax or the excise alcohol tax, and we're not on top of it and we don't know what's going on, it falls on us as the Board of Equalization in terms of what's happening with those programs. So it's great that we're bringing this forward and asking for regular reports on all of our responsibilities as members. Thank you.
Thank you for the support, Member Gaines. I just want to, for the edification of this discussion, note that the insurance tax program is jointly administered by the Department of Insurance and the Controller's Office and the Board of Equalization. And this is on page 3 of the Board of Equalization Annual Report 2017-2018. So I think this further supports my supposition that I've got on the table for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cohen.
Members, I'm going to just recap everything that's included here because it's my understanding that the motion by Member Cohen is to include all 4 goals here. So I'm just going to read them back, and if anybody has any objections or comments, please raise them before we take the vote. And in recap, we're talking about we're going to approve all the Member Cohen's recommended word changes and added action items for goal 3 and 3A. We agreed to delete 3B as redundant of 3A. We agreed to incorporate 3C1 into 3A1. We agreed to delete 3C2 as unnecessary. We agreed to keep 3C4. We agreed to delete 3C4 as unnecessary. We agreed to delete 3C5, and 3C7 as redundant of 3A. And we agreed to move 3C6 under goal 4. Is everybody in agreement with that in this motion? I'm seeing heads nodding. So I think we're prepared to vote then. Ms. Davis, if you could please call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, would you like for a call for public comment at this time?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
AT&T moderator, can you please let us know if there's anyone on the line who'd like to make a public comment regarding this matter at this time?
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to make a public comment, please press 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. Again, that is 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. We have no one queuing up, so please continue.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Davis. Call the roll.
Chairman Vasquez?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Schaefer?
Aye.
Member Gaines?
Aye.
Member Cohen?
Aye.
The Controller Stowers?
Yes.
So that's unanimous of all present. Thank you. Now, members, the only thing we have left is just goal 4, which I think it seems like everybody's on board with this. And I already heard, looks like Member Gaines and Vice Chair Schaefer agreed to take this one on to bring this back to us with a branding as spelled out in goal number 4. And just remind everybody what we just voted on, since we voted on all the other goals as one big motion. In there, it was spelled out who's responsible for what. For example, goal number 1, it had Ms. Cohen taking the lead on that, and then it delineates to the others. So just a quick reminder of that. But for goal number 4, if I'm hearing correctly, if we could entertain a motion to approve goal 4 as spelled out here by Member Cohen. And it looks like I see a nod of a head here.
Yeah, so moved, Member Gaines.
So it's been moved by Mr. Gaines.
Second, Vice Chair.
Second by Mr. Schaefer, Vice Chair Schaefer. And in that motion, we're including that Mr. Gaines will take the lead on that, and with in partnership with Vice Chair Schaefer. Correct?
That's fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
All righty. With that, well, Ms. Davis, do we have anybody to speak on that, or is that considered the same item?
We can definitely ask the public for any public comments. AT&T moderator, can you please check with the public to see if there are any public comments on this matter?
If there are public comments, please press 1, then 0 to get into the queue. Again, for public comment, please press 1, then 0. We have no one queuing up. Please continue.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, if you can please call the roll on goal number 4.
Chairman Vasquez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers, Deputy Controller Stowers,
I'm sorry, aye.
Oh, now we heard you. Okay, so that's unanimous. So that concludes goal number 4. Are we all good to move forward on the next item? Ms. Davis.
The next item is L2B, Workforce Planning Workgroup Update. This item is presented by Chairman Vasquez. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, members, once again, this is another item that we actually had to put on hold. But after hearing all the testimony and input from assessors and the AABs about workload due to COVID-19 and split row, it's critical that we move forward on this now. First, I want to recap where we were when we last discussed this and make any changes we want and reach a consensus on the go forward outline for the next steps. I sent you all documents from the prior board meeting discussions and material that was posted on the PAN, specifically the January 28th, 2020 LA County Assessors College-based Appraisers Training Program, the February 7th, 2020 my memo on the Workforce Planning Workgroup Framework, and the third one was February 20th, 2020, the member Cohen's memo on recommended workgroup members. We also had testimony from the California Assessors Association President Don Gayko in January, and in February, we agreed to launch this first workforce planning workgroup in March, which was interrupted by COVID-19. And then member Gaines and I volunteered to take the lead. I'd like to get your input on these 3 issues we briefly discussed on the work group framework, so we have a clear idea of what we intend to do and how to accomplish it. Issue number 1, the work group purpose, scope, and deliveries. Our purpose is to, as discussed in the assessors and the BOE, have the workforce talent necessary for the successful administration of property tax duties and functions, both in individual counties and statewide. As to our scope, there is an expectation that all workgroup meetings should be public, allowing participation by the entire board and fully transparent. Member Cohen provided some specific thoughts on our goal and our deliverables. Our vision is to work with assessors, property tax professionals, and stakeholders to gather data and receive recommendations regarding recruitment, retention, training, and continuing education, and compensation for both local and statewide. In terms of deliverables, Member Cohen suggested the work group should issue monthly progress reports and updates to board and a final report with recommendations for the board to adopt. With that, if I can just ask Member Cohen if she could please explain a little bit what she was visioning for the larger group, which would encompass the whole statewide participation. Member Cohen.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Just give me 1 minute. Let me just pull up my notes if you just give me a second, Mr. So, Mr. Vasquez, I thank you for giving me a few minutes to reiterate the vision for the board's workforce planning group. that I created with board approval while serving as the chair last year. I've got several remarks prepared, so bear with me, colleagues. I will try to get through them as quickly as possible. So we're all aware that this work group resulted from our first modernization of California's property tax system statewide, the informational hearing that was in San Diego last fall. And at that hearing, we heard very informative testimony and recommendations related to workforce planning. And during the hearing, we asked the executive director to present a recommendation to the board at our annual meeting regarding how we could leverage the breadth of experience, how we could leverage the knowledge and background that was before us to address these important workforce issues. And what Ms. Fleming did was she presented her recommendations, and I respectfully asked Chair Vasquez and Mr. Gaines to lead this effort when we were in the creation or the formation of our work group. I
got it, well, on my regular phone, not on my work phone. I got it from Brenda. I just responded to it and listened to that.
We're getting some back noise there. Somebody needs to mute.
There we go. She's muted.
Go ahead, Ms.
Oh, I'm at home. No, I'm at home. Well, do you want to, what's Laurel's text? I don't know if it was from Brenda or not.
Hello?
You're not.
Somebody's not
muted.
muted.
Please make sure your phones are muted at the time.
Ms. Thompson, mute your phone, please.
That happens to all of us.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. It's happened to me many times. That's embarrassing, but don't worry. We'll continue to press on. So, so what Ms. Fleming did was she presented some recommendations, and I asked that the chair and Mr. Gaines lead this effort that we created in our workforce planning group. And you may recall that the goal of the workforce planning group is to allow members to work with county assessors, to work with basically our stakeholder partners. We've got the assessors, property tax professionals, relevant stakeholders, so that we are all collectively able to gather data and receive recommendations regarding the recruitment, regarding the retention, training, continuing education, and compensation of employees. Now, the board would hold a series of public meetings and issue a report containing the board work group's conclusions and recommendations for action. Board member staffs will perform the work and provide board members with the support required for the work group action. Participants would include individuals who testified at the September 19th, 2019 informational hearing, as well as representatives from community colleges, the California State University system, as well as the University of California system. Other participants may also be added to the work group. This is just a list of suggestions. It's in no way meant to be exclusive, but we want to be very inclusive in our thinking and our outreach. By the way, Chair Vasquez, I previously provided you a complete list of my participants, recommended participants. Let me know if you need me to resend that to you. Frequency. Now, the workforce planning work group meetings would be held, I envision, twice a month. The frequency is important because the current workforce needs of the Board of Equalization, as well as the Assessor's Office, are a priority and potentially amplified as we have the split roll initiative on the November ballot for consideration. Some of the roles and responsibilities I also thought about. I believe the workforce planning work group will address the workforce capacity needs and challenges related to recruitment and retention, to training and continuing education, and compensation, as I said before. Now, support from the agency, what I envision that looking like, it's quite simple. I think we're going to need support from the agency to assist in obtaining information and data. Specifically, I believe we may need the agency to create and issue a survey to counties, to county assessors, asking for data on the following items: recruitment needs in the local county assessor offices for entry level, for mid-level, and then also for senior staff. Also, retention numbers. So, for example, the numbers of staff who have retired or left the office for the private sector. Compensation information. I think this is also a critical one, Mr. Gaines. I've heard you mention this quite often. Focusing on entry level, mid level, and then also on senior level, paying careful attention to appraisers to address the following: compensation for those most likely to be recruited as new employees, compensation for mid career professionals, to be most likely to be recruited to the governmental offices or possibly even private sector, and then compensation for staff within 5 years of a discretionary retirement age. Office training programs and needs also are included in this, which encompasses the initial training and continuing education for professionals working on appraisals. Now, I'm not naive. There are budgetary constraints. There were budgetary constraints last year, and I feel like even this year more so, they're even more exacerbated. So we'll take this with a grain of salt, given the economic climate, but there are budgetary constraints which impact addressing identified workforce challenges. I acknowledge that. Here are some key deliverables. The Workforce Planning Group would be responsible for presenting a final report with recommendations to the board. The final report would highlight objectives the board and the BOE will pursue to make significant progress in addressing the workforce capacity needs and challenges. This report would also include specific requests for action to address workforce capacity issues, including recruitment, retention, training, and continuing education, as well as compensation. And ultimately, the report will serve as a roadmap for the board, of Equalization, to further its constitutional responsibilities in property tax administration statewide for all 58 counties. I want to take a moment and talk a little bit about Bagley-Keene, the Open Meeting Act, and just acknowledging that we should make sure that these meetings are publicly noticed and held in accordance with the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act. And Mr. Chair, this concludes my summary for my vision for the Workforce Planning Group. I believe it's time for us to roll up our sleeves and get to work on these important issues that we started working on last year. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's it for me. Back to you.
Thank you. I agree with everything, all the comments you made, suggestions. My only concern is I was wondering if you'd be open to basically running two tracks here. But one of them is the one you just spelled out, really, that's the statewide, very inclusive, large group, basically a larger body that would include all the stakeholders moving forward. And then on a separate track, I was hoping that the members would agree that allow myself and Member Gaines to continue on the emergency certificate. We're trying to, this pilot, basically a pilot program, to try to get this emergency appraisers, the certificate approved ASAP. Because in talking to Jeff Prang at LA County, he's real worried, and he understands that obviously we had to put everything on hold given COVID-19, but he's really worried because whether split roll passes or it doesn't pass, he's really needs to generate more appraisers. He says he's having a tough time just keeping up because of folks that are retiring and then others that are just leaving into the private sector. So he wanted to see if there was a possibility. Well, he was very supportive because I told him we were going to cast a wider net and do a larger group. He's very supportive of that and he'll participate in that. But he didn't want to get bogged down and be held back from trying to expedite and fast track this emergency certificate that we're trying to put forward ASAP. We were hoping we would have been a lot further into it, but obviously given COVID and the fact that it's been difficult to gather ourselves, we haven't been able to really even reconvene. But I have had some conversations with Member Gaines, and he's ready to roll up his sleeve with me. And what we're thinking on, at least on the pilot, is to obviously include a large county, which would be probably LA with Jeff now on board, and then pick like a mid-range county and then a small one to at least get the pilot up and running. And then on the same track is make sure that we include all the individuals and stakeholders that you've listed and you've shared with us, Ms. Cohen, and anybody else that maybe we left out and we maybe need to look at that participated during these last hearings that we've had under COVID. I'm sure there was individuals that we didn't even think about that exist out there that we should include as part of the stakeholders. So those are kind of my thoughts right now.
Chair Vasquez, if I could.
Yes, Mr. Gaines, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just weigh in, thank you. But I like the proposal that the chair is bringing forward in that Assessor Prang has a program. He's already got the nuts and bolts pulled together on how to execute in LA County. And I think there's a lot to be learned from that particular program moving forward that I think could be replicated throughout the state. So I think we could actually do it in each of our districts. And so you'd have 3 other programs plus the LA program moving forward. But I'd like to learn, I mean, I'm familiar with what Assessor Prang has brought forward, but I'd like to actually see it executed. And then at the same time have conversations with, I've been having conversations with our community colleges. So I met with the president of Sierra College, Willie Duncan, and he loved the idea. He talked about a program that he had collaborated with the Building Industry Association, the BIA, and they put the students through a 12-week program. And by the end of that program, they were certified and 100% of them got hired. Now, I'm not saying that that's the right sort of pathway in terms of the timeline or anything of that nature, but we do need to execute and get something pulled together quickly, especially in the advent of split roll. And we have our own problems right now just with the blue tsunami. We've got a lot of baby boomers who are retiring, and we've got to figure out how to get good quality people. And I am really concerned about if split roll passes. I think every property assessor is going to be it's going to be like gold. I mean, they're going to be getting job offers from the private sector that will continue to pull away from our county assessors and the BOE itself. So I'd like to work together collaboratively. I think that's a great idea. We want to do that statewide, but it sounds like we can, in my view, we can get going right now with this LA program, figure out how to emulate it, and I think we can get a jump start. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Hearing no others. So is there a consensus from the members that we kind of run this on 2 tracks? We do the one pilot with LA County and myself with Mr. Gaines, and then we'll also work with identifying a medium-sized county as well as a small one to get this, at least this emergency, the 2-year appraiser credential program off the ground. And then on a separate track, we'll move forward with the recommendations that Member Cohen brought forward in terms of really bringing together a larger group that may take a little longer to get off the ground, but at the same time, I think it's important that we include as many people as possible that may have an interest or have some good ideas and thoughts on how do we handle this thing at a statewide level. Ms. Cohen, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe you could explain to me a little bit more so I can get a better understanding about your rationale on why you want to dual track this. Like, what's the purpose?
The reason I wanted to dual track it is just to try to expedite one over the other, because I know I'm just thinking in terms of what we went through just recently as we're trying to organize a large group. Sometimes it gets really cumbersome, and I don't want to hold back lost time that we've already lost because of COVID. And in my conversation with the assessor Prang, he's worried about if we sit back and try to cast a wide net, that we're going to have this discussion about what to do and how to move this thing forward a year from now, still discussing it. And he's really getting antsy, I guess you might say, and wants to see what we can do to generate this emergency credential ASAP, basically. So I basically shared with them that.
I still don't. So Mr. Prang, although he represents a very large county, he still is one of 58 assessors. Yes. And I have not really had the chance to talk to the other 23 assessors that I work with and talk to on a fairly regular monthly basis. So I'm not sure how. I'm processing. I'm not sure how I feel about dual tracking this. I'm just concerned. I'm concerned about private meetings. Quite honestly, I'm concerned that I want to make sure that we have the assurances that we're going forward and that we've learned from past mistakes, but that we're transparent. So, is dual tracking going to mean that there's private meetings, or does that mean that there still be publicly noticed meetings and we'll just have more publicly noticed meetings, or what exactly? How does that look? I'm just struggling with how it looks.
Let me try to walk you through this on the fast track, for example, with the emergency credential. Basically, that obviously we have to be careful on that one. That it would probably just be in terms of members. It would probably be just narrowed down to myself and Mr. Gaines. Now, there's nothing stopping us from inviting others that might want to participate in terms of the transparency piece that you're referring to. But I don't think we'll be able to, for example, have at least if we're trying to expedite this thing, have it with more than 2 members from the board, because then we run into the whole Bagley King issue, right?
So I just want to make sure that we do not, in an effort to be expedient, that we do not publicly notice the meetings. I mean, is that something that we can agree to, that everything will still be publicly noticed, even if it's a discussion?
I'm open to that. You know what? Let me ask Henry Nanjo if he's on the line real quick. Mr. Nanjo?
Yes, I'm here.
I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
In terms of if we try to fast track this through our task force, for example, on this emergency credential, or I should say this emergency certificate that we're looking for the appraisers for member Gaines and myself, we could do, are we still confined in terms of, do we have to give notice when we call those meetings together? Is it the same 10 days or are we able to expedite that a little bit quicker?
As long as it's just the 2 board members' offices and not from the other board members. In other words, you don't have a quorum of board members participating, you can have a public notice in less than 10 days. Once you have a quorum that is either representatives or 3 or more members participating, that's when you have to comply with Bagley Keene and provide the 10 days public notice, yada, yada, yada.
Okay. So, Member Cohen, so what I'm envisioning with the fast track, I guess when we're going in this 2-year appraiser credential program, is I'd like to have that flexibility. I mean, we'll public notice it as much as possible, but we may not have, we may not go the full 10 days. It might be 5 days notice because it'll only be 2 members if you're okay with that. That's what, I mean, we'll try to do it 10 days, but I'm just thinking, for example, let's say Jeff Frank tells me, you know, we need to have this meeting with our board of supervisors this coming Friday. Boom. I don't want to be strapped and saying, well, you know what, we need 10 days. We only have 5, we can't do it.
So I'm a little uncomfortable with what you're proposing because although I'm not interested in taking the lead and organizing and necessarily doing the work, I am interested in participating. So based on the definition that you gave me, you and your co-chair will be the only two members able to participate, and that would exclude me, Ms. Stowers, or anybody else, Mr. Gain or Mr. Schaefer, if we want to participate and bring our voice to the conversation. So, and I'm uncomfortable because, again, like I said, I am going to be thinking about the 23 counties that I represent and the 23 assessors that I represent that may or may not be able to engage on the call or attend a meeting. So I'm going to, if you put this to a motion about dual tracking, I'm going to have to vote no because I really want to be able to participate. And again, let me be clear about what participation looks like for me. It's not running the program, not running the show. I would definitely be deferential and respectful to the chairs and the co-chairs of this effort, but I really want to be at the table listening and responding to what we're discussing, period.
If I could just wait.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. My thought is that I think we could do both. If we're meeting, let's say we meet with Assessor Prang on this issue, and we're trying to advance it, why couldn't we collaborate with other members that would want to participate in those discussions? And if we have 3 or more, that's publicly noticed with the 10 days advance notice. We could also give updates on a monthly basis in terms of what's happening. And I think there could be an exception though, where you're on a timeline that's very short, where it would just be maybe just Tony or Tony and me at a particular meeting. So I think that flexibility is valuable in that if we want to execute and try to get a model moving, that then could serve as an opportunity for the other counties to replicate and make necessary adjustments for the needs of their particular counties.
And just members, this is Henry Nanjo, Chief Counsel. Just to be clear, Member Gaines, be careful because under Bagley-Keene, if you and, for example, hypothetically, if you and Chairman Vasquez are meeting in a subgroup with a stakeholder group, and then you discuss what happened at that meeting with a third board member, that technically would be a serial meeting in violation of Bagley-Keene.
Oh, yeah.
So that would, you be careful about that.
Absolutely. So that would require really a reporting back at the regular board meetings in terms of what the status was of the program.
That's correct. Or like you suggested, Member Gaines, convening a meeting with 10 days notice, and that way you can have a free discussion with the other board members at that point.
That's right.
I just wanted that clarification was made.
Chairman Vasquez, this is Brenda. If I could ask a clarifying question. So just running through the scenario, and perhaps more a detailed discussion is going to be needed here. But if we run through the scenario where, let's say, 2 members are meeting with an assessor on a program, in this case, Mr. Prang, for example, if you're having those meetings, would you be engaged in discussions just to gain information and to get clarity about their program? If you're meeting with the Board of Supervisors for LA, for example, what actually would be, I'm just trying to, of the discussions, and would there be commitments made or an expectation that commitments are made? If we could get some clarity on perhaps how you see that workflow occurring.
Well, what I kind of envision, because we had some preliminary meetings already, there's, for example, the County of LA, they have pretty much already have laid out the coursework that needs to happen, and which includes the whole curriculum. And they've kind of laid out already, I guess you might say, a track that we're now just trying to expedite. And I think one of the things that has to happen pretty quickly, and one of the reasons I'm a little leery about getting too large of a group that's hard to move, is that, for example, the county Board of Supervisors have to agendize at some point here real quick this item, because they also have a requirement to hire appraisers in LA County with 4-year degrees. So we need to have them change that to a 2-year degree with this emergency certificate, basically. And so do we at the state level. It's my understanding, I don't know if it falls under a rule change or some kind of a motion or resolution that we may have to do within the BOE, because I think the way it's crafted right now, the BOE requires a 4-year degree, and we need to change that. And it sounds like there's a consensus on the board to do that, but I want to make sure that we're not sitting back and waiting for this large group to reconvene before we can act on some of these things that we could do ASAP, for example, in a smaller working group. That's my frustration, I guess. And I'm hearing and I'm listening, and I appreciate, and I'm concerned also about the whole transparency piece that Member Cohen is raising. But so that's where we're kind of at. And I think at this point, if there's hopefully a majority on the board that's willing to run this on 2 tracks, I'd like to move that, and with the understanding that, you know, whenever possible, especially even the smaller group, we'd like to obviously keep all the members informed. So as we have our monthly meetings or even any other special meetings, is to try to report back and give you updates as they're happening on this fast track emergency appraiser's credential. By all means, you know, we want to obviously make sure that all the members are informed, but I just don't want to get stuck at some point where we need to maybe call for a quick meeting with, whether it's the Board of Supervisors in LA County or some other county that we're working with in this process of fast tracking this credential. I don't want to get stuck, I guess, is my real concern.
Chair Vasquez?
Yes, go ahead.
This is Don Gakel.
Doug, yes, go ahead.
I wanted to, I appreciate the discussion, and I don't want to get involved in the board's Bagley-Keene decisions, but I wanted to speak about the program that Assessor Prang has put together, and I did speak with him recently, and I know you are correct, he is anxious to get going on that. His focus primarily is on providing training and coursework for people who already have 4-year degrees, and to kind of expedite and assist in getting those people into the workforce. I know he's aware of the 2-year degree program. That was not his original concept. And I don't know, I can't speak for him on whether he would want to change his requirements to accept the 2-year degree or not. I know that there is that a lot of assessors, our county requires a 4-year degree. And so I think there's room for discussion with the Assessors Association. We have an education committee and a standards committee that look over those things. So that part of it, there could be fruitful discussion with the CAA on that. But I do know, and you mentioned the 2-track system, but I do know that Assessor Prang is anxious to get going on a program that he kind of put together for providing training for people who already have 4-year degrees. And I think that's the program that he most wants to get going on. The 2-year degree program, the board wants to go through with that, and the BOE change their requirements for that. That's a separate issue. I don't know how. I know from speaking with him months ago on this, that it was one of his concerns that a broader statewide effort would slow down and impede his implementation of his program. So I do want to say that he is anxious to get going on that, and I think the what the BOE is proposing is a worthwhile discussion and effort, but I know that he would like to get going on that, and I think if he can get going on that part, that would ultimately be a good template for how the training and education program would go, separate and apart from the 2-year degree program. Again, I don't want to speak for him on that, and you've had discussions with him, Chair Vasquez. So as far as they're changing their requirements, I don't know, but I do know that his original plan was to get going on providing training for people who already have 4-year degrees to expedite their entry into the workplace.
No,
so just to keep that in mind.
No, you're correct. I mean, that was my original discussion with them, but the last couple of conversations I had with them, I think you're correct. He's still looking at a 4-year degree because that's kind of like the low-hanging fruit, right? You have folks that already have a 4-year degree. Now it's just a matter of convincing them to go through this training that they provide to actually get or pass this exam, so they get their actually credential. What I've been discussing with him separately from that is working with the community college, which we've already had conversations with the chancellor in LA, for example, that's willing to do this emergency credential, basically, or certificate, I should say, that would allow folks to be hired with a 2-year degree, but it's an emergency credential basically for this, which doesn't mean they still have to complete the 4-year at some point because it's an emergency. And just like when we had it for the teaching credential, you had we give them a window. It might be 4 or 5 years where they have to complete the 4-year degree. If they don't, they lose that credential and they lose their job.
So time out here, let me interject here, because
yes, go ahead.
One thing that is definitely making me uncomfortable is I feel like the conversation is too anchored and too focused on one assessor and one county. And that really concerns me because there are other counties. I think about Santa Clara County in my own district. I think about Alameda County, San Francisco County, that also have significant challenges when it comes to staffing, significant challenges when it comes to producing, the roles. So I'm going to have to just step in here and let you know that if the purpose of dual tracking this is to be expedient and then to create something for one specific, to solve one assessor's particular problems that may or may not address other assessors' problems, I'm not going to support that at all. I think we need to be more inclusive and a little bit more global in our approach, in our thinking, and how we are going to be solving the challenges. And quite frankly, we've lost a lot of time. We started this conversation last year, and here it is, June, end of June, and now we're just picking it back up. Yeah, I know it was a pandemic, but we wasted a lot of time bullshitting around on stupid things when we could have been addressing these. These work proposals and everything have been before us since last year. So I understand that there's a sense of urgency, but I also want to accept the fact that we as a body have been sitting on this proposal and this tool to be able to move forward. So I am not going to be voting for dual track based on some of the things that I've heard. And even what I heard from Henry Nanjo, I actually would be in agreement for and support that. It seems like that the points that he raised that we should be mindful of, we presented this information to the board. The board agreed to revisit the issue in the work group proposal. I have proposals that I would like to consider, but based on the structure that you're proposing would exclude my voice and my ability to participate. And so that's not something that I can just turn my back to and ignore. So out of the 58 counties, I mean, I represent 23, and I think Ted, you represent what, 26 or something like that, 24. I mean, they're fairly significant number as well. So to be able to drive this conversation just And again, I'm listening to the language, and it's just anchoring around one county, a significant one to the state, no doubt, but one county assessor. That makes me just uncomfortable. And I don't think that that would be fair to the rest of the county assessors and counties that each one of us each represent. So I'm going to vote a no vote on the dual. We can put it up to a vote and, you know, continue to move on with our agenda. That's my piece. Thank you.
Chair Vasquez, if I
go ahead,
weigh in here, I don't think it has to be either or. Speaking to Member Cohen's comments, I don't know why we couldn't move forward with the LA plan. We have a template. We've got a very effective county assessor who has already executed a blueprint for a plan, and I think we could all learn from that. I'd like to move forward. Number one, make a second on the motion, because I think there's value in moving forward with a template that's already been created that could be replicated by other counties, could be amended or changed or adjusted to the needs of each particular county. And I am concerned about getting a big group together and trying to actually, come up with a decision in a timely time frame. And that if we can move forward with LA, that serves as an opportunity for other counties to take a look at it. I've been in conversation with my counties about trying to put together an education program locally. I think each of us could do that in our districts. And so I would ask if Member Cohen would reevaluate what the proposal is, because I think what it does is it can provide a pathway and actually save a lot of time. And we can look at the mistakes that are made. We can look at what's working and make those adjustments in the counties as we proceed forward.
Thank you. And just for a point of clarification, to get back to some of the comments Member Cohen just made, this is not just LA County. I think at the very beginning, hopefully I was clear, I was talking about LA County as being the large one. We would also include in this pilot a medium and a small county. So you're welcome to, especially if you have somebody at the mid-range that you want to bring forward, I'd like to hear it, especially if they're willing to work with us on this fast track. Because at the end of the day, I think you hit it on the nail. We don't want to sit around and be talking about this. Like we said, we put this thing off, and there's a need, and we need to fill it ASAP. And so that's why I'm proposing these dual tracks. But this doesn't mean that we're excluding a mid-range and a small county. This pilot's going to include one of each, a large, medium, and a small.
Member Vasquez,
yes, go ahead.
I would ask that we make a little adjustment to that. I think we all need a pilot program functional in each of our districts. So I don't know if that would be 2 small counties and a medium-sized county, or 2 large counties, a medium and a small, but to represent each of our 4 districts.
So, in other words, you're saying, so right now it's I was looking at 3. So I guess to make sure we cover the 4th one, we could have maybe 2, you're saying either 2 small or 2 medium, and then the large?
Yeah, my suggestion is that it would be, you could let each member figure out, what was the appropriate county in their district. So we're all kind of moving forward in the same timeline. All
right, I'm open to that. So at the end of the day, we would end up with 4, and obviously I'm going with LA County, and then it's up to you 3 to decide who you want to choose from your district to be in this pilot, basically.
But the thing that gentlemen, that we're completely negating is that we are eliminating the breadth and depth of our stakeholder partners in this conversation. I mean, they came before us, they testified, we're in agreement, but now we're ready to take a vote, and then we're going to determine what what the scope of this pilot is going to look like, I'm just really uncomfortable with that. We haven't included them in this new process. I don't know if there are anyone on the line, any public commenters on the line. Maybe we can listen and see what they have to say on this particular item. Ms. Toya or AT&T, are there callers lined up for this?
Ms. Davis, do we have anybody? I haven't heard anybody, but.
We can check on the phone if you'd like. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to queue up on the phone for a comment, please press 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. Again, that is 1, then 0.
Thank you.
Member Vasquez, if I could just comment again.
Sure, go ahead, Mr.
Member Cohen's comments. I don't know why we can't do both. Why wouldn't we engage the interested parties in how we implement in each of our districts? And the way I see it is that we would engage and that we would have all of the interested parties and we'd get their input as we move forward.
Chair Vasquez, this is Don Gakel again. I didn't want to imply that we're weighing in on one side or the other. I wanted to make it clear what I understood about Assessor Prang's, the California Assessors Association Education Committee. These are the kinds of things that we deal with. The CAA would be happy to participate in providing, as a stakeholder, and providing guidance and advice, however the board wants to proceed. I understand that time is important here. We're in the last 2 weeks of June. I think myself and half the assessors in the state are turning over our roles right now, and the other half are still working on their roles. So the next couple of weeks probably will be a little busy for assessors, but we're happy to. The CAA would be happy to engage, however the board goes forward.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Let me just ask from a procedural question, and more just in terms of resources. And I guess this is a question for Mr. Nanjo. If we wanted to move, this larger group, or even this pilot program, looking at having meetings, because I foresee if we're going to fast track this, we're going to have to call meetings almost every 10 days. Is that something we could do, given the staffing we have now, Mr. Nanjo?
Thank you, Chairman Vasquez. No, speaking on behalf of board proceedings, I don't believe that's sustainable. As you know, we are moving into SAPD season. I believe we just received our first 2 appeals. I have to dedicate some of my board proceedings staff, of which there's only 4 people, to work on the appeals, and that's going to take up more and more time. So we would not be able to turn around board meetings that quickly.
That's what I thought. All right, members, let me just reiterate then my motion and see if my seconder is on board. And that is that I am proposing that we set up a dual track, one which would be the pilot that Member Gaines and myself have started already, using LA County, Jeff Prang's preliminary model. And then I will ask the members to choose a county within their respective districts to be included in this pilot. And then on a separate track, we would continue doing the larger group that would include all the stakeholders that were laid out already by Member Cohen. Is that acceptable by my seconder, Mr. Gaines?
So request to ask a question?
Yes.
Before the board proceeds with the motion, I think, and I apologize, but I'm pausing with a question from staff in terms of, would it be possible just to bring clarity to the issue, if we could have kind of, if it's time to pause to allow us to have some clarity on exactly what the pilot would look like. And I'm going to request if Mr. Young and perhaps Mr. Gago can help weigh in on this, because I'm just wanting to make sure in the accelerated program to be able to clarify specifically what BOE's role would be, to the extent that for example, if LA County has a program and they've created the curriculum, our requirements for certification is still the 4 years. So I'm just trying to understand for clarity, if he's doing something in the 2-year time frame, then either that requires a requirement change on our end, or is it something that just the counties would be doing to accelerate this program? And if that's their program, I'd like to make sure that we've got clarification on what exactly BOE's role would be, so that we can adjust our workload capacity. And then if it's something that we are engaging, let's say that we're engaging locally with LA County, whatever actions or commitments are there, that content would have to come back to the board for board discussion and a vote. And then that's when we get into the Bagley-Keene, and as Henry's indicated, and it's to try to turn meetings around every 2 weeks. We could not be able to sustain that. So I'm just trying to establish what our role would be, one, and then secondly, how do we ensure that whatever is happening in those local conversations in the pilot, how do you pull that information back out of those localized levels and bring it back to the board, to the extent that any actions or decisions or anything that's needed where it requires us to change any program or commit resources in the space, in our training space, how could we support that, and how do we accommodate that? So I just want to make sure that we've got, hopefully this helps to bring some clarity to what our role would be and how we would need to at least consider how we're going to move forward with it. And I do support understanding what Mr. Prang is trying to do in doing the acceleration. And I think each equalization district probably has a similar need. But as I mentioned, we're going to have to bridge that back into a public discussion and then really assess what is the training, so that if there is a change in any of our requirements for certification, if it's in our lane, or is this something that would just be exclusive to localized work?
Well, it's my understanding that we do at some point have to bring it back to the BOE, to the board. Now, I know the county is looking to fast track it within their own county, but I don't think they could even move. They could do it. I mean, they might be able to pass a resolution locally, but I think at the end of the day, that still has to come back before us, the BOE. And I think you're right. It would mean some participation from staff to make that happen. I'm trying to figure out a way where we minimize as much in terms of what we need from you folks at the state level, with the exception of when this thing comes together within, let's say, the county pilot program, that when we bring it back, hopefully it's pretty much laid out. So it's just, all we have to do is allow for you folks to, I don't know if it comes through a form of a resolution or a rule change or whatever it takes to make that adjustment up at the state level.
Yeah, because I think maybe what we could help do is to provide some clarification on what our requirements are for that certification process, both educationally, experience, et cetera, so that we can see where we're aligned with what the localized pilots would like to do and what they're trying to achieve versus what we're required to do. If there's alignment, then great, but if there are any gaps, then to allow for some discussion to determine how to fill those gaps. We're totally on board with our need to help in this lane of getting some additional staff on board and getting more appraisers. I'm just trying to really clarify where BOE is going to be engaged in this, and making sure that we're still meeting our requirements for the certification process. I think there's just one missing element for me there in terms of, if we're meeting within the pilot, what would you need from us?
No, I appreciate that. And if this thing moves forward, we'll definitely make sure that we include, if not yourself, somebody from your staff as we begin to formalize, especially this pilot with the assessor.
So Mr. Young's on the line. Mr. Young, do you have any questions or?
Yes. If I may, can I offer just a little bit of clarity on what is actually required for a certification to do ad valorem appraisal work? So there is a requirement for a 4-year degree to get that certification if you do not have any other qualifying experience. And there are some other qualifying experience that will count. They include that of real estate agent, accountant type work. So there are other qualifying experience. So you have a 4-year degree that will qualify for you to take the exam. If you pass, you can be certified. If you do not have a 4-year degree, we will be able to substitute a year for year of qualifying experience to count towards that 4-year degree. The exception to that is if you are to do audit work. So it's a little different. If you do assessment of personal business property, then you need a 4-year degree with a specialization in accounting. So my understanding of it is, and I don't know this for 100% certainty, is that there was discussion about using a 2-year degree instead of a 4, having that qualify you to at least do either on a temporary basis or to qualify you to actually do ad valorem appraisal work for an assessor's office for property tax purposes. That, if it is truly to substitute a 2-year degree for a 4-year degree, at the very minimum, that would require a change in a property tax rule in the regulation, because it's actually spelled out in our regulations, and the whole regulations is 281 to 283, and these are the board's regulation on what is and is not required in order to get a certification to do appraisal work. So once again, I understand what Mr. Prang and we're trying to do here. We're trying to figure out if there is a way in order for us to get more people qualified at a different in a different track than what is normally required. But much of it depends on exactly what model they want to use in order to get them to qualify.
So, listening to your explanation, potentially what could happen then is that we could bring people into the fold with a 2-year degree, and we may have to make a rule change or whatever it is you said,
right,
to get them to qualify, but it's given them basically an emergency appraiser credential that would only be sufficient, or would only be acted, or they would only be able to use it to get employment if they're enrolled in a program to get the 4-year degree, for example.
That is one track to do so. If you bring some under the current requirements, if you do not have any of the other qualifying experience, and you only have a 2-year degree, you would not qualify. So if the assessor brings you in and employs you, then you could not do ad valorem appraisal work. What you can do is you can do other support work. You can either gain experience in the office as other qualifying experience, and then later on meet the 2-year have an additional 2 years of qualifying experience, then you could qualify for it. Or you could, that's one track. The other track is you actually change the regulations and allow a 2-year degree person to do work. Once again, that would require a regulation change. And they can attack it one of two ways. It all depends on what type of program they want to set up and how quickly they want somebody to come in and actually start doing work.
So as I'm listening to you, so one of the, I guess one of the tracks we could develop here is if we, let's say, set it up where the 2-year degree would qualify for the 4-year if maybe they just passed the exam. Isn't there an exam that they have to pass anyway?
There is. The actual certificate, there is an actual certification exam that you have to get a passing grade in order to be certified, fully certified by us, by the BOE.
So they have to pass that exam even if they have a 4-year degree, for example, right?
That is correct. That is correct.
So maybe the rule change. So I'm thinking maybe the rule change would be that a 2-year degree has to pass that exam and then be enrolled in the program to get the 4-year degree through this emergency appraiser credential that we create.
That is one option. Once again, we are working. I'm attacking it. I'm addressing it in the current statutory and regulatory scheme. If you are proposing to change the statutory or regulatory scheme, then there's a lot more. I guess there's a lot more freedom in who you can and cannot do ad valorem appraisal work. But under the current regulatory and statutory scheme, either you need a 4-year degree or you need 4 years of qualifying experience and pass the certification test in order to do ad valorem appraisal work. So if they're proposing a rule change or a different or apprenticeship program, that is a different track.
Okay. Ms. Stowers, go ahead. I see your hand.
Thank you. My question is for Mr. Young. You talked about a rule change if we wanted to go to just a 2-year degree and qualified experience. Is that a rule change only, or do we have to change the underlying statute?
It really depends. The statute only requires a 4-year degree specializing in accounting if they are to appraise personal property, personal business property. That is a requirement. If you are doing real property, we have, and many counties have appraisers that do not have a 4-year degree, but have 4 years of qualifying experience, and that would qualify them to sit for the certification exam. And if they pass, then they would get a certification.
Okay. So it's just a rule and passing. I wasn't really clear if it was, because you said Rule 281 and 283, and I just wasn't clear if we have to go further in making changes into the actual underlying law. But it sounds like we would not have to.
We would not if you are only talking about appraisers that appraise real property. Okay. It's a little different. We actually have an additional requirement for auditor appraisers, those that appraise personal business property, equipment. They actually require the degree in accounting or a specialization in accounting. There is one extra provision in there. If they actually pass a certification exam that tests their proficiency in accounting, then they can waive that requirement. Those are already provisions in law and in our rules. So there are a couple ways around it, but typically the person that comes in and does the auditor appraiser type of work, they usually have an accounting degree.
Understand. Thank you for that clarification.
Anytime.
Question, if I could?
Sure. Yes, Mr. Gaines, go ahead.
Oh, is that Mr. Schaefer?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, Vice Chair, go ahead.
Go ahead, please. I'll speak next.
Okay, well, this is Vice Chair Schaefer. Do we have to decide this today? We could put it over for another month and have a meeting of ourselves with the leadership of the assessors and have Ms. Cohen fully heard. And, I think that might bring a little less rushed and a more elevated scrutiny to what we're being asked to do.
Mr. Gaines?
Yeah, I appreciate Mr. Schaefer's comments, and we can discuss that in a minute. But let me make my point here, because I just wanted a point of clarification, and that had to do with Rule 282, temporary certification. I was wondering if Mr. Young could explain how that works.
Yes. So a temporary certification it's just that it is a temporary 1-year certification from the board that allows somebody to do ad valorem work while they are employed by the assessor or the board. They are expected to meet the full qualification requirements of a permanent certification at the end of the year. The temporary certifications are not renewable, so you have 1 year in which to study for the exam, take whatever courses the assessor may require. Their educational requirements may be different from ours, and pass the exam. So in some cases, not rarely, some folks do not pass it upon the first attempt at the exam. That gives them a year, so they do have another opportunity or chance to retake it. And but the requirements are that you are, one, have bona fide, either employed by the assessor or have a bona fide offer, and that you will meet the requirements within that time frame.
Okay, you have to have the 4 years of experience, qualifying experience, or a degree?
Yes, that is still part of it. You still have to meet the same requirements that you would for a permanent one. So you, as a temporary, if your question is, can you be in your 3.5 years into your degree and hope to finish it within that 1 year, the answer is yes. And you do have, but you have to meet it at the end of the 4 years.
Okay.
I'm sorry, at the end of the 1 year, you have to meet the requirements that would get you a permanent certification.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chair Vasquez?
Yes, go ahead.
Gakel.
Go ahead, Don.
Yeah, I know that we're all talking here about what we to do something good to help, and what I think overall could be a very good program, but we're kind of getting hung up on some of the details. This is designed primarily to help assessors' offices get employees, and I know State Board of Equalization has issues in retaining that too. There are a lot of technical issues here that are being talked about, but it's nothing in writing. I think it could be very useful for the board if BOE staff and assessors, through their education committee, get together and talk some of these issues out and present a written report to the board that outlines the requirements that could potentially be changed, and what the program might look like, so that you're all working off a template and information from the folks who are going to be affected by it.
No, I think it's a good point. Well, let me see. I mean, we have the motion here on the floor. I was just wondering if there's support to move it forward, because now I'm thinking if it does get approved, I think the goal, at least for this first initial meeting, would be to reconvene with the players we've already regrouped with a few months back, which would be obviously Jeff Prang from LA, myself, Mr. Gaines, and then some of the folks that we have involved already from the LA Community College Chancellor's Office. And maybe we come back in the July meeting and present a work plan for the rest of the members to review, and then at that point get your suggestions, comments, and try to expedite this as quick as we can.
Chairman Vasquez, this is Brenda, if I may comment.
Yes, go ahead.
To the extent, I think that would be a good approach, and I understand too what Assessor Gakel is also saying. So to the extent that you're going to have a follow-up meeting perhaps with LA County, if, some representatives from our office and, might participate, just to make sure that we can build a bridge between what you're trying to achieve and the agency's responsibilities. So that would be something that can be considered. We could participate at whatever level in those discussions and meetings to come back with a report to the board for the July meeting.
Sure. Is there a consensus from the members to do that?
Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Vice Chair.
I'd like to make a substitute motion to hold a special meeting of the board in July to vet this very important issue and get input from the assessors and the stakeholders. I have not had an opportunity to consult with my assessors on this, and I just don't know that we can make a decision today on this.
If I may, Chairman,
yes.
Mr. Schaefer, Vice Chair Schaefer, I don't know that we would need a special meeting for that because that would require a different public agenda notice process. So my recommendation would be that we would come back to the July meeting, which is scheduled for July 22nd, as a part of the July agenda.
That would work.
Okay. So why don't we do this? And it sounds like what I'm hearing, and I think there's a consensus, is why don't you allow Mr. Gaines and myself with the county assessor and the other players we've met with, regroup with BOE staff and come back with a work plan, basically, that we would present back to the board at our July 22nd meeting.
Yeah. Chair, this is my substitute motion that's before the floor. Do I have a second?
Matt, looks like.
Yes, I'll second that motion. It's Malia.
And this.
So members, may I ask Chief Counsel to clarify the motion?
Yeah, I was going to ask you the same thing. So, Mr. Schaefer, what can you restate your motion? I think you're muted.
Your mic is not on, yeah.
It's a substitute motion that takes precedence over the pending motion.
Yeah, you're correct. Can you repeat that substitute motion?
It's to hold a special meeting and to hold a meeting that is part of our July 22nd meeting and to vet this issue, and that segregated part of our agenda for July 22nd will give us time to confer with our stakeholders in each of our districts.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's basically what I was saying. So you're not asking for a meeting before the 22nd. You're saying to include it in the July 22nd meeting.
Yes, I'm willing to do that.
Okay. Is the seconder on board with that, Mrs. Cohen? I see a head nodding. Okay.
Thank
All right.
Yeah.
So basically what we do is that we would come back on the July 22nd meeting to just address this issue as part of the agenda.
As part of the agenda, that would be correct. So
Yes.
it's not exclusive to the agenda, but would it be included? And we can clarify if we will continue to take it up as an L item.
Exactly.
Or if we look at it as a K item from a staff, operationalizing it, and if there's some implementation tasks. But once we have the discussion and see the report, we could then make that determination. But it would be one of the agenda items at the July 22nd meeting. So Mr. Schaefer, to clarify, it would not be a special meeting.
Can I clarify that Member Gaines has a informational meeting on the next day, the 23rd?
He does.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that's great. If I could just get clarification from maker of the motion. Now, would this be an agendized item that we would then vote and take action on?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that's fine.
Ms. Stowers, I see a hand.
Thank you. In addition to voting and take action, we will also have a summary report from BOE staff on the different certifications and requirements so that we're all on the same page.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
It looks like there's a consensus. Do we need a vote? I think there's a consensus, right? Or we need a vote. Maybe we should cast a vote.
So again, before Chairman Vasquez, Chief Counsel, please restate the motion clearly. So
Yes.
It can be clear, and before the vote is taken, please.
So as I understand the motion is to have as part of the July 22nd meeting an agenda item which will be regarding the process and this accelerated process or whatever alternate process is for certification, that prior to that meeting there will be a meeting with Assessor Prang and Chairman Vasquez and Vice Chairman Member Gaines, and that BOE staff will be involved, and that there will be a report as part of that agenda item for a possible vote and action, which would include the options and the current ground rules for certification so that the members can be fully informed.
Correct. Can we get a roll call vote?
Chairman Vasquez,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Schaefer,
Aye.
Member Gaines,
Aye.
Member Cohen,
Aye.
Deputy Controller Stowers,
Aye.
So that's unanimous. Thank you, folks. With that, Ms. Davis, if you can call the next item.
Excuse me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Excuse
Ms.
me,
Cohen.
everyone. I'm sorry.
Go
I need to make a motion to rescind the vote. I apologize, but I'm a no vote on that. My apologies.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion to rescind the vote. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you very much. So this is just a simple notion. You all can keep your votes the same way. I'm going to change mine. Thank you. So,
But-
Madam Chair, can
But
you
Ms.
just-
Cohen,
Yeah.
were you the second on the motion or you weren't?
I was not the second on any motion for this, no.
I thought you seconded the substitute motion that Mr. Vice Chair Schaefer just made.
Oh, excuse me. I'm for Vice Chair motion. Yes, I was.
That's what we were voting on, so I'm a little confused here.
So am I. Give me 1 second, please.
Okay.
Thank you. I will, the motion and the vote will stand. I apologize for the confusion. We can go on to the next item.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, next item.
I'm sorry, Chairman Vasquez, just so the record is clear, the motion to rescind has been withdrawn, and the original vote as tallied by Clerk Davis will remain standing on the record. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Ms. Davis, next item.
Our final item for the day is item N, public comment on matters not on the agenda. At this time, we have not received any public comments, but I would like to ask the AT&T moderator if there are any public comments for items that are not on the agenda at this time.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to get into the queue at this time, you may press 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. Again, if you'd like to get into the queue at this time, please press 1, then 0 on your telephone keypad. I have no one in the queue at this time. Please continue.
Thank you. Ms. Davis, so that can, the public comment's over, so we're prepared to adjourn. Is that where we're at now?
That is correct.
Right, Chair Vasquez, this is Vice Chair Schaefer. I have comments on adjournment.
Okay, let me just, I would like to adjourn this meeting in memory of Elizabeth Brown, who passed away on Wednesday, June the 17th. This is the mother of our staffer, Ms. Thompson, and our thoughts and prayers are with you and your family. And it was mentioned earlier, but I'd like to just officially adjourn in her honor as well. And Mr. Schaefer, you have somebody?
Well, I concur with your adjournment commemoration. I think that's very fine and suiting. For myself, I want to note that today is the 100th anniversary of a faithful servant of the people of the state of California, May Lee. May Lee is truly an amazing woman. She began her state service in 1943, right in the middle of World War II, at the Department of Finance as an accounting officer. When asked how she handled her shift over the years, she told us that I went from using an abacus to an adding machine to a calculator and to a computer. She's worked under 10 California governors over 70 years. I took her over to the governor's office to introduce her to our governor. She'd only met Governor Jerry Brown, and he spent 20 minutes or so in animated discussion. And if any of you want to see the entire discussion, you could just Google the four words, Gavin Newsom, May Lee, M-A-Y-L-E-E, and you'll be entertained. The philosophy that she has, she says, quote, I have a positive attitude and I strive to mentor others. I'm so proud that we honored her last year during Older Americans Month when she was invited to join me with the governor. We celebrate her 100th anniversary today and wish her continued success, great health, continued state service with the Department of General Services. Many happy returns, amazing May Lee, from all of us on the Board of Equalization.
Thank you for that. And as always, I'd like to also adjourn in all the lives that have been lost due to COVID. You know, those numbers keep growing. And in some counties in California, we're starting to see a spike. And I'm a little worried that we're not even out of this first wave, and where people are starting to loosen, or I should say cities are starting to loosen up the regulations. And I'm just hoping it doesn't backfire on us too soon here. But with that, I'd like to adjourn in memory of all the lives that have been lost so far. And if there's no other adjournments, oh, we have one more, Ms. Cohen.
Yes, I don't know if anyone mentioned this, but Mr. Gaines mentioned it earlier in the remarks. We want to just recognize and close the board meeting out in the memory of our very own faithful staff member, Miss Lisa Thompson, with the loss in the passing of her mother.
Yeah, I just listed Elizabeth Brown.
I didn't know her name by name, but thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, that was her. Thank you. With that, members, it is 2:25, and this meeting now is officially adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, members.